Preview-SMTN.
How's it going, everybody, and welcome to Shin Megami Tensei Network. I'm your host, Spencer Presley, and joining me is a very special guest this week. We have Jordan Alves, who I just realized, much like with every other guest I ever have on, have I said your name correctly, your last name, or watch I found some way to absolutely butcher your last name? Is Alves correct?
You know, man, you wouldn't be the first person who asked. Every time I have somebody who tries to pronounce it, they always manage to pronounce it some way. And then, even my own, family has said it, multiple different ways and have gotten into arguments about it. So technically, it's really up in the air. I've always said Alves, but,
Alves, okay.
there's other people that have been like Alves, or it's all right, whatever, you do you.
It's your own family's equivalent of GIF or GIF.
Exactly.
Awesome. Well, Jordan, thankfully this should be the only time I ever have to butcher your last name, but in case anyone out there does not know who you are, do you want to give a quick little introduction of who you are and how you got into SMT or Persona?
Yeah, absolutely. So my introduction was a little interesting. I was having a little get-together with some friends, and I was watching my best friend at the time's older brother playing this game. I didn't know what it was, but I liked the music. I liked the character designs and the voice actors and everything. And then I saw them shooting themselves in the head. I was a little confused, a little taken aback. And then I kind of just forgot about it for a long time. And then fast forward 10 years later, and I walked into a random GameStop back when they still sold PS2 and PSP games. And I found Persona 3 FES, Persona 4 Nocturne, and I want to say I found the Persona 1 PSP and Persona 2 PSP, so I literally just bought everything I could get my hands on. I first started with Nocturne, and from there I just kind of went from there. I've been with the series for as long as I can remember from that point, so I think I was around 14 years old or something like that, so I've definitely just been collecting. I'm a really big collector for the franchise. I used to be part of Spencer's group a long time ago, did a lot of demonology before demonology was super big, and now I look at it and there's tons and tons of other content creators who have adopted that type of that content, so it's really cool that came out of it, and kind of went into hibernation for a little bit, but it's good to.
It's funny though. You mentioned being in the Facebook group. I was trying to remember because the posts should still all be up there and stuff. But was trying to think what was the name of it? You had a thing for the name whenever you would do a deep dive into talking about the history of them all. What were they called?
I think it was something like Demon of the Day, Demon of the Week. Well, it started as a weekly thing,
Mm-hmm.
and then I think it was just literally whenever I felt like doing one, I was like, all right, let's do this, and then I took requests from a lot of the members, and I remember at the time I covered probably half of the franchise's demons, which is pretty crazy.
It's funny, the two standouts I always think of are you posting about demons, and then now known as LaRue doing his Did You Know Tensei stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Those two, I always think about how they basically started of just the two of you guys were just kind of bored in the group, because in terms of group activity, it was always kind of and even still is to this day a kind of a scattershot approach of it's me posting way too much, and then everyone else kind of picking and choosing whatever they do want to post or comment, because even now we're almost to 9K members and stuff, and it's still a lot of people who will only just comment or only because it's not a thing where you're always needing to kind of dive head first into something.
No, I definitely get that. I belong to another Facebook group for this band that I really like. So I think there's 20K members, and a lot of that is also just you get a lot of the same 10 or so people that post the most often, but mostly it's like a like and comment here and there. Like they get a lot of reception out of it. It's just like it's pretty common to see like just only that happen on the page. So I guess that's just a universal thing that happens in groups, which is totally fine.
So as you mentioned, you were kind of doing your own thing for a while, and you've been in hibernation, but you had a YouTube channel. When do you think like you started really doing YouTube stuff? Because even like for me, I've been doing the podcast for almost a decade. I pretty much only started doing YouTube in 2020.
Right. So I think when I first started out, this was back in like the heyday of YouTube where like nobody was talking about Megami Tensei or Persona. So like a lot of the videos that I did got a lot of like not slow build up, but like they definitely exploded at a point where all of a sudden people started realizing like, oh, these games exist. Oh, these games are really good. Oh, why haven't people been talking about these? So I think I first started my very first video that I ever attempted was back in like 2013 or something like that. Like I really wanted to do a Nocturne LP, and like that was like unheard of. You could go back and find. There was one person that I remember. I loved their LP. It was just literally them playing through the game. There was no commentary or anything like that. But that was like the oldest LP of an SMT game that I can think of. There was like nothing else before that. So it started with that. It didn't really go anywhere, and then I did a couple Persona 3 Fusion videos, and those were pretty popular for the time being. Then I moved into like
Oh my god,
these semi like reviews.
I gotta ask you about Fusion videos because I've only really dug into them on my Nightmare Quest marathon of beating the Nocturne Platinum. So were they just like, hey, here's how you get this fusion? Because like I'm amazed at how many videos are out there of just like there's not a lot, but like the ones that you would think of looking up of like, oh, this hard to find demon, or like any demon that's like you wouldn't normally stumble across through fusion. It's like, oh, here's this video shot on a 4x3 webcam and it's got like 150K.
Yeah, exactly. That's pretty much how it was like when I did it initially. So the first one that I remember doing that like I really wanted to do was I don't even remember like how I stumbled upon this, but I was playing Persona 3 FES like on a New Game Plus, and I was trying to finish the compendium, and at some point I came across that you could actually fuse Orpheus like as is, like you can just do it. Like he's not like a unique persona that cannot be fused again after you get him, because you just get him initially. He's your initial starting persona. So I was like, that's really weird. Like I should make this public. So that's exactly what I did. And there was like a whole bunch of people that on one end they were like, that's really cool, had no idea. And then like on the other half, for me showing the video, they were like convinced that like this is fake.
That is, I mean, yeah, because it's one of those things like you don't think about. And especially now,
Right.
like, I think that's almost like part of like why the recent trend in like Persona 5 has been like it like unless you really go out of your way, they want you to almost like lose your starting persona. It's just be like, hey, you can buy these back, you can fuse them again. Like they're not actually that special.
Well, so that's true, but like with Orpheus, and maybe it has something to do with the fact that it's like literally the first time where you could recreate them again if you wanted to, like barring Persona 1, because I know you can do that with those initial personas, but with Orpheus, you need like mid-level demons just to be able to refuse, like 30-40 level demons just to refuse him. And that's the only combination that I am aware of that you can do that, but you get so little out of it. Like even with a max Arcana like linkage, you don't get anything out of it. I think he gains like 3 or 4 levels, and that's about it.
So besides like the fusion ones, like what were some other sort of like videos you would kind of highlight on your channel?
Uh, a lot of it was mainly just review, and still to this day, I don't quite understand like how people, I guess, enjoyed them, just because I look back at them and I'm like, I'm not really doing much in these videos, but I guess it goes back to what I said before about it being like this was pretty unheard of, and you wouldn't see that many content creators talking about these games. So I think that is kind of where a lot of the attraction came from, which is pretty cool, because it's cool to know that like I was in this like little niche community before it just like blew up, which is cool too. Like I'm glad that the series is getting more attention, but I don't know. There was something unique about it just being this like pretty like kept secret, I guess.
Well, and it's also funny because like even now I could see someone saying like, "Oh, it's blown up," but like even the names that are like I guess you would call big, I don't really think of as big. And even for like larger series, like I don't think of one particular person when it comes to series like Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, where, like in the way that you might think of like certain people like, "Oh, here's the lore guy for all the Dark Souls videos," or like, "Oh, like there's no like one person for any like kind of SMT content out there," and especially a lot of like the bigger ones. I just have never really checked out their content, and then even learning about them, it's like kind of like, okay, well, it's not necessarily for me, so like I'm not really gonna kind of like check it out. Not even in a like disregarding it kind of way. It's just kind of one of those things of like, um, literally I had no idea who, because you mentioned Let's Players, I had no idea who the hell Johnny Awesome was until maybe like early 2020, and I think I've still
Hmm.
never seen a single one of his videos just because like he's very very popular. I know he does Let's Plays. I could not be paid to care less about Let's Plays. So it's like one of those things of like I'm sure thousands of people have discovered like Persona or SMT or whatnot through him, but it's just one of those things of like it's not something I'm ever gonna seek out for it. So like it's just like it's so foreign to me. And then like
No, absolutely.
and then like so other ways of like everyone kind of does their own thing, and I'd say like in the last year it's definitely gotten a little bit more popular because like for the longest time I was the only podcast who talks about this in terms of like in a dedicated sense. Like obviously there's like your normal like video game discussion podcast, there's like your JRPG podcast and stuff like that for like solely consistently uploading kind of specific stuff. This it was still like the only thing, and even though like there are other ones, like I know David has his own podcast and Kuro on the Midnight Channel has his own podcast, like there are other ones for it, but like that kind of just started popping up in the last like 12 months or so. So it's been kind of funny of like for the longest time like everyone was just kind of off doing their own thing. Like the videos I post would be very different than the videos you would post, or the videos like even someone like Gnarly or LaRue would post. It's not like I'm not going to make a video doing a challenge run. I think challenge runs can be interesting, but like a challenge run video is not something I would want to put time or effort into. I think like I enjoy more of the kind of like editorial and behind the scenes stuff is more like up my alley personally.
No, I can appreciate that too, and it's kind of funny that you mentioned that because I remember for the longest time, Gnarly wanted to really do some form of video with me, and I just didn't have the time to do it. It was just like it was during a time where it's like I literally have no time to split between like hobbies or hanging out with people. Like I'd love to do it, I just like I cannot find the time to do it. So eventually, I did end up doing a video with him. He was doing his, I don't know if he's still doing it or if he's finished it at this point, but he was doing his Devil Survivor 2 Record Breaker Challenge, where I think it was his No Fusion run. And it was really cool. I really enjoyed it. And it's kind of cool to kind of branch out because I don't know, for the longest time when I think back on it, it's because I don't necessarily consider myself somebody who like discovered the pre-popularity of Megami Tensei content, but I definitely think I was lucky and fortunate enough to be kind of in that little bubble prior to like more people talking about it. So for the longest time, I always wanted to try and talk to these like-minded individuals who shared this interest and shared this passion with it, because at the time, like, I was really hard pressed to find anybody who like played any of the games, let alone even knew what they were. And I mean, that's still like an issue today, of course. Like, I'm sure you could walk up to the average gamer and talk about like a relatively obscure game and they won't even know what it is. Or like, I know that when Nocturne's HD remaster came out, nobody knew what it was, at least at the GameStop that I went to pick it up. Like, nobody had ever heard of it, nobody had played it. So I was like, okay, maybe it's not nearly as universal as I thought it was.
No, but I mean I think it's kind of a weird thing of certain like it ticks a couple of boxes. Like so like right now, yes, we're definitely in an era where SMT, Atlas, and Persona stuff is as popular as it has ever been. But they're like there is like a thing of like not like in a hipster sense of like, oh, we liked it before it was popular, but like there's almost kind of like that camaraderie of like, bro, as someone who's done this podcast for literally, again, like I said, almost 10 years, there were large gaps of nothing, of every week or even every other week whenever we would get together, talk, or just post about whatever. Like half the reason, the whole point of the Facebook group was, hey, post about whatever you want, is because like it would be so boring if all we did was talk about like, here's this week's like merchandise, here's this figure, here's this random art book releasing. Because like for the most part, people just kind of care about the games and stuff around it, and like not everyone out there is going to be kind of into everything, and so it kind of made you sort of had to either look at news differently or find different angles to like look at things. Because I remember it's funny, like the show started at such a high point, because like if you look back at 2012, you have stuff like Golden, you have Arena, and then following up shortly after, 5 getting announced, you have Dancing All Night, Persona Q, all of those games like following afterwards. But like I'd say from like that 2014 to pretty much 2017, we were kind of just feeding off table scraps of, oh cool, there's a Persona movie. I mean, it's not coming out over here, but hey, it exists, and stuff like that, of just like kind of stretching out ways and like little notes. And obviously you had other things of like SMT Apocalypse, Record Breaker, and like Strange Journey, but they never really kind of hit to that level of like 4. I think SMT4 was a really, really big thing that hit in 2013, but then like you look at Apocalypse, for whatever reason, I don't know if it's just because like the way it was marketed or whatever, 4 Apocalypse never really felt like the 1.5 I look at it as. Like it's just kind of like it's almost like that black sheep what if sequel, and like that's what I love about it, but that didn't like really bring in a new audience. You look at Record Breaker, that's like the best version of Devil Survivor, but it like came way after Devil Survivor 2. Like, it was very, very, like, kind of late to the party. And that was pretty much, like, you were either into that game or you were not. Like, that was not something you were just going to cold recommend to somebody. And even then, looking at Deep Strange Journey or Strange Journey Redux, that was, then again, kind of late to the party of, like, it was a game that not everybody loved, and then it was so late of, like, being a 2018 3DS game. It's like, what are you doing?
No, I agree. That's definitely what I thought at a large point in time, where there was literally just no content. And I feel like that works for the series and also works against it, because like you said before, I remember that we kind of were just in this little hibernated bubble for the longest time, and then 4 gets announced and it literally exploded. Everybody was super excited and on board for it. And then one after another, there was more content available, and then unfortunately with this franchise, it seems like once the well is dried up, or at least once like enough of the information has been given out and Atlas has nothing left to give, they kind of just hide away until it's like, okay, it's either time to explode on this one big project or multiple small projects leading into this really big project that we have. It's not complete, it's nowhere near complete, but it's coming, trust us.
That's a really interesting point, like, because I haven't even thought about this, but once we're out of SMT5's out time, it's going to be pretty quiet for a while. I still do not expect Project Refantasies anywhere close to being done. P6 is so early in development, like, I have no idea, I haven't even fathomed how early that is. And whatever they're going to do for the anniversary year is pretty much just going to be ports. It's not going to be anything crazy. So it's kind of one of the funny things of, like, I wonder if we're going to then get to that era of really niche news for a while, where it's like right now we're kind of like living our best life. Literally every day we wake up, there is a new gameplay trailer for SMT5, which is crazy to think of, like just going off of like a month ago where we were at.
I agree. I think it's kind of, I mean, I do think it's really cool that every day we can wake up and there's a new like demon showcase. Like, yeah, for like you and me, for example, it's like we've seen a lot of what they've already showcased, but it's cool to see these like newer demons that have never been introduced before, or they're so old to the point where it's like, okay, it's time to make them relevant again and time to move them forward. So I appreciate that they're doing that, and I do appreciate just the fact that we have this confirmed window of release, because for the longest time, and I mean, I feel like this is kind of like a given, whenever a project that Atlas doesn't talk about or doesn't like give us anything to work with for extensive periods of time, we either automatically write it off as we already know that it's not finished yet or anywhere near complete, so who cares? We're not going to talk about it. And B, they've abandoned the project, which I don't think Atlas has like a huge track record of really abandoning their projects. I feel like that's something that you would obviously know more about, but to my knowledge, I don't think they've actively abandoned a ton of projects, but
not in a long time. And man, let me tell you, there are a couple of times they probably should have. Should they have taken 4 years to make a enhanced version of Devil Survivor 2? Definitely not. Am I glad they did it? Very much so. Like, if you remember going back to when they announced Devil Survivor 2 on 3DS, it was supposed to come out a year after the DS one, and it ended up coming out like 3.5 years later.
I think I just genuinely forgot that it was supposed to be around that same time, and I was like, whatever, it'll come out whenever.
Yeah, what was funny is, like, it never got announced in the West until then, but it was announced in, like, a random Famitsu or something, of just like, hey, this is coming, because, like, we were in that era of, like, it's like when you see a PS5 port get announced now. It's like, it's not big news. It's big news if you follow it, but, like, no one's, like, kind of stopping the presses for, like, hey, a DS game is getting brought to 3DS. That was, like, pretty common, especially for, like, big JRPGs that kind of got sent to die on the DS.
Right, exactly. So it's funny that you mention that, because I want to bring something up that I don't see like people talk about at all. And every time I've brought it up, people have either no idea what I'm talking about, or a very few amount of people do know what I'm talking about. And do you remember when in Japan, when Record Breaker was supposed to be released and they were doing all these promotional things for it? Do you remember that I think it was Do Ra 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 was supposed to be like a thing in that game?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, that's a big one that people always forget about. So the funny thing about that is, for anyone who doesn't know, basically I always forget the artist's name, but the artist who did Durarara also did Digimon Cyber Sleuth, but was the same artist who did Devil Survivor 1 and 2. For some reason, they did crossover promotion. It was DLC, but it's all on the card, so it's like whatever. But if you downloaded, you could download and have basically as summonable demons or guest characters. You could have 3 characters from Durarara, people who I'm all forgetting their name for, but Headless Biker Lady, Super Big Buff Bar Guy, and Horny for Super Buff Bar Guy. I like own like half of Durarara series. I do not know how all of their names have escaped my brain, but basically they were having a crossover thing as they were all going to be playable characters in the game. And when that got announced in Japan, I was like, oh my god, that's awesome, but everyone kind of forgot in the West, because basically what happened was the rights for the Western version, they couldn't get them to agree on a fair price, they thought. And so Atlas Japan didn't want to pay the Western licensing rights for the American version. But what makes it even funnier is because it was all part of the base game code. If you go into the code and mess around with like a DS like action replay or whatever, they are in there. Like, if you just change a little bit of code around and unlock them for your save, they are all in there. They are all localized completely. Like, they are just ready to go. They just never got the go-ahead for distribution for it. So it's really funny. Like, I remember covering it at the time and asking Atlas West, I was like, hey, why aren't these there? And they were like, licensing. And it's like, man, that really sucks, because like that was such a cool little like promotional crossover thing, especially because they have the same artist. But yeah, like that's one of those weird things of like fun facts that are lost to time unless you care to remember.
No, exactly, because for the longest time, like when that game came out first, to the point of maybe like a year or so afterwards, there came this thought in my mind where I'm like, wasn't there supposed to be like more content here, or wasn't there supposed to be like something that I'm not getting here? So I went and looked, and I was like, yeah, they're missing this like interesting crossover thing, because I haven't watched Euro in years, but like I remember thinking, I was like, this is such like a cool little idea, like it makes sense, sorta.
Oh yeah, like at the time it was airing on Adult Swim, so like it would have been good marketing.
Yeah, exactly. So I just found it weird that I'm like, cool, it was a thing, and then like silence, and I never like looked further into it. So it's actually a good that I'm getting like the context for that, because I didn't know if it was something where, like you said, licensing, or it was just like, yeah, this is either a Japanese exclusive, you're not going to get it, or just whatever. Like we didn't care enough to really like actually go through with it or not.
Yeah, so it wasn't like Atlas West didn't want it to happen. It was literally just the Western publisher named a price, and then Atlas Japan, who writes the checks for Atlas West, they were like, no, you're not paying that, not worth it. So they were like, womp. But yeah, thankfully,
Super sad.
Yeah, thankfully, at least all that work is still there. Like, yeah, you can't legally access it, but like, it is cool though. Like, I think especially just because it is so easy to like get something like an action replay and like modify a save. Like, 'cause you don't have to hack your DS to use it. You just have to modify your actual save file.
Right, and it's interesting that you say that too, because I'm reminded of the fact that in Devil Survivor 2, the code exists for the major Bell bosses from the original Devil Survivor. They still exist in the game. So like Jezebel, Belder, Belberith, and I think a few others that weren't in the final game were like you can still get them in the game through an action replay. So it makes sense that that's also available.
So, fun, nostalgic stuff aside, I do actually have one more question for you before we get into our other ramblings of SMT-related stuff. So, for you, I know you've been playing a lot of Nocturne HD, like you just streamed it like a couple of days ago when people are hearing this, but for you, as someone who's definitely dipped your toe into quite a few games of the series, what's like your big, like, what's like at the top of your pile of shame for the series in general? Like, what's that one game that if you're like, man, if I could just like put everything to the side and like nothing stops me from playing this, like what would be the next game you want to really try in the series and why?
That's a good question. If I could, and I totally can. It's not a matter of if I could or couldn't. It's just a matter of whether or not I want to buy it. But I probably would invest in a Japanese Xbox and just play through 9. Actually, well, yeah, I do that. I think that's literally the only thing that I currently own that I have not physically sat down, played, and finished, which is like saying a lot because a majority of what I own is just the Japanese backlog. So there's all the Majin Tensei games, all the Devil Children games. There's Rondo, which was like never released, and every time you mention it to a person who was a fan of Majin Tensei, they're like, "Yeah, that game doesn't exist," and just stuff like that. I would have said Devil Summoner 1, but I've already finished Devil Summoner 1, so it doesn't really count in this case.
So I will say the one thing that really sucks is like SMT9 is really cheap, but the thing that sucks about it is like, so I've played SMT9. But the thing that sucks about it is the original Xbox and the same with the 360 are fucking region locked, which really sucks. So like if you want to play it legally, you had to play it on a Japanese Xbox. And the funny thing is at the time, the friend who let me borrow their Xbox, I didn't realize at the time, bought a Japanese Xbox just for 9. So I never really equated the two because I never owned an Xbox. I always played my friend's Xbox.
Yeah, I get that. That's so funny. He only bought it just for 9, which is like something that I would do.
Listen, it was like back in the day of like you were either buying an Xbox for Halo, Ninja Gaiden, or really, really obscure stuff like Metal Wolf Chaos and SMT9.
Yeah, that makes sense. Well, it just sucks too because like I have 9. It's sitting here in my just in my box of SMT stuff. And every time I go on eBay when I'm looking for something curious, because the other day I bought the Revelations Persona soundtrack, and it's been something that I've been wanting for like the longest time. Every so often I'll come across the collector's edition of 9, which is like the most bare bone thing exists, but it's still really cool and I want it, but it's also not worth it. So.
But it's a really fucking dumb big box. I always respect I respect the collector's edition. I always respect a collector's edition where it just says "fuck your shelf. I'm gonna make this box really large for no reason."
No, absolutely, because I was thinking, I was like, when I really think about it, what does come in this collector's edition? I was like, oh, you get a watch, you get a little figure of Maria, which is literally the only reason why I want it. You get the game, and you get this huge, massive box that you can't put on any shelf ever.
I will say this, like, someone is either a true hardcore fan or lives apparently in a fucking warehouse. Name me one person. If people are listening to this, please send me pictures, whether it be Twitter, on Facebook, or whatever. Please prove me wrong. I've never seen someone who fully displays their P5 Collector's Edition vertically. Because like if you're looking at that with the sleeve vertically, it's the most uncomfortably fucking large thing I've ever seen.
It makes you want to go and like fix it because it's just so like bizarre and awkward.
Yeah, so like the way I have it displayed is like it's nice because it's like a sideways box and you take the sleeve off, but like the sleeve also is just so hideous because it just like shows you everything that's on it with the cover, and it's just one of those things of like no, I'm good. I don't want to have a shrine like set up for this monumental like monolith of this collector's edition box.
Well, like it's funny that you say that because I feel like there's grounds for a video there, like the top 10 like collector's editions that like are just so like obviously shit title, but like they're so awkward that like it defies all logic and reason as to like what the developers or who the merchandisers.
I have the perfect number one. It's a PlayStation Vita game for Galgun, and it's this enormous box lengthwise. Thickwise, it's normal, but it's only massive because it came with a wall scroll. And while most companies will just be like, "Oh, make a collector's box and then throw the wall scroll in separately," for whatever reason, P-Cube was like, "No, we're including it in the box." So it's 90% empty space, wall scroll, and then everything else. It's like the most lavish, like over the top size of a collector's edition I've ever had. Like, and I don't have the heart to like move it. Like, it's right next to me right now, and I'm looking at it. It's just like it is hilariously overproportioned.
Yeah, that's how you do it. Before we move on to the rest of the questions, though, I do have one question, just because obviously you already talked about it in your previous podcast episode, but like, so I thought it was so ironic and funny that you asked me like what my thoughts about the collector's edition was for 5, and in my mind, like I hadn't realized just like this like the shitstorm that was going on with like people trying to buy and secure their pre-order.
Mm-hmm.
So when I read that, I'm like, oh, he's probably just talking about like the content. So I was like, it's all right, it's pretty cool, I'm gonna pick it up. And then like fast forward like an hour or so later, when I'm trying to like follow the links that Atlas West has posted, and nothing is working, and I'm like, oh, so this is what he's talking about. And then that's when I reached out to you, and it's like, you got to help me. Like, I want this. I don't care. Just like, please help me find this. And thankfully, it worked.
Yeah, the funny thing is about it, you're not the only one who had that confusion. I had a lot of people who I asked about, like, oh, hey, what do you think? And a lot of them are like, oh, it's okay. Like, it's whatever. Like, not kind of, because, like, with most collector's
not
editions,
putting the pieces together.
Yeah, like, a lot of my friends, like, some of them may not have bought a collector's edition in, like, the last 4 years. So it's kind of like one of those things of just like, oh, I don't know, like, whatever, I'll go into GameStop and throw them $5 and I'll get it, like, a week before it comes out.
Exactly. That was my exact thought. Because I'm like, I don't expect too many of these people to go out. I mean, I guess it makes sense that a lot of people would buy it up, but I didn't expect it to just be such like a problem that the links weren't going to where they were supposed to. The site was crashing every time you tried to like add it to your cart and do the pre-order. It just wouldn't work.
Yeah, it's hilariously still being a big deal. Like we'll get into it a little bit more, but like the thing I tell everyone who's been like, oh my god, what a shit show the collector's edition thing has been. If you're in Europe, that's the ultimate struggle, because they're in a situation right now of European fans just don't know. Like, right now, the only pre-order links that have gone up, I think, are the Nintendo UK store, and they just show us sold out. I don't know if they were ever actually up, but it's just been really funny of, like, Nintendo, who's publishing the game over there, it's not Atlas, they just haven't really, like, disclosed it or whatever, which, like, is going to go into what we're talking about, but it's just been so funny. Like, in the West, it's been like, holy shit, they're all sold out, I need to pre-order it. When in Europe, it's like watching a country on fire and just be like, oh god. Well, like, what's gonna happen when it goes live over here? Because like my like guess is like it's unironically just going to be, oh, when they do go up, they're gonna have like a bajillion of them and they're not gonna sell out. Like, it's just gonna be like, oh, okay, cool, I got it.
Well, yeah, and it's like, so for so many years, it's like not Atlas, I guess in the sense it is Nintendo, but like whenever it does come to an Atlas product, like Europe never ever gets a break. Like, they are so far past the point of pre-orders, buying the physical copies if they happen to get it, because I don't know how long it took for them just to get SMT4 when we did. Like, I think it was like super long after the fact. Like, to the point where 4 was like barely relevant anymore at that point.
Yeah, if I'm remembering correctly, it was a year and a half after, and it was digitally only.
Yep.
But
It's super sad.
I need to do a deep dive, like get Marcus in here or something and bring him back, because like I don't think people are aware of how many games Europe missed out on. Like I was talking about Strange Journey yesterday, and someone like reminded me like, yeah, dude, we just didn't get Strange Journey, which like blows my mind. I'm just like they got Devil Survivor 2, they didn't get Devil Survivor 1. They didn't get Strange Journey, but they did get fucking Apocalypse. They didn't get 4, at least physically, but they got Apocalypse. So it's just like, yeah, it's
they
like
get every other game, so they're not going to get 5. They're going to get 6 if and when that game comes out, and it's just going to be this never-ending cycle.
watch like although see like watch them have like because Nintendo is only publishing it in Europe, like watch them somehow have like something really cool to like lord over us. Like they're gonna have like an instruction manual or something.
Yeah, right. Something that totally makes up for this like long overdue delay.
Ooh, I will always give this, because I need to import this one of these days. I know it's not rare, thank God. I need to import a European copy of Catherine, just for the fact that Deep Silver, the company who published it for Atlas over there, they did the really, really cool thing of instead of like K Catherine or C Catherine being on the cover, it was reversible. So the only way you could get K Catherine is if you bought a 360 copy in Japan and America, but over in Europe you can just like flip them over, which I thought would always be really, really
That's pretty
wild.
cool.
Yeah, like that, like that's a cool thing
Yeah.
of like, it took them like a year to get it later after all of us, but like that's a cool, interesting little like difference in your like addition that like makes it interesting.
No, absolutely, because obviously it seems kind of counterintuitive for a PlayStation user, for example, to try and get their copy, and it has the Catherine that they don't want, and then vice versa for Xbox users, for example. So it would have made more sense, in my opinion, just to do that, or at least do what Full Body did, where it has like both of them on the cover at the time.
I have beef with Full Body's cover only with the fact that like I think it would have been cooler if they committed and had like 3. They should have done like the randomized element, which I know would have pissed off people, but like how funny would it have been if for Full Body it's a random like blind like cover. It's like, okay, if you rip off the shrink wrap, you can see which girl it is, but like until then like you don't know.
I mean, I think it's a cool idea. It definitely like has some kind of merit to those who are collectors, as well as like people who love the kind of like gotcha system that video game covers have. I know like super dead game, but I know Dissidia NT did that with its steelbook
That
cases. Like
that
I
was
have
that
one
was
or
the
two of them.
exact one I was thinking of, because the fucked up part about Dissidia NT, God, I wanted to like that game so bad. The fucked up
I
part
did
about
too. Oh my god.
The fucked up part about Dissidia NT is it had 6 steelbooks. It had an exclusive one to the collector's edition. It had 3 randomized ones in America. It had 1 random retailer exclusive in Europe, and then 1 random retailer exclusive one in Japan. So like getting all of the steelbooks for that, and that was back when I was like, I'm gonna own every Final Fantasy steelbook. I stopped for Dissidia, just because the beta burned me so bad. Like I don't even own that game. Like I love Koei Tecmo, I love Team Ninja, I love Dissidia, and I love Final Fantasy, but like just that game was just such a flaming hot pile of disappointment. Like no amount of steelbooks in the world got me to buy it, which really sucks because like they tried to make that game better, but that game's problem was
Yeah, they
like
did.
its core 3v3 mechanics were just so overly complicated and not fun. Like they would have had to basically just make another game to fix that game, sadly. But like it sucks because like
Well, that's
you look at it and like they added fucking Final Fantasy Tactic characters. They made like the last character they added as DLC being Arden is like the most Spencer bait thing possible because I fucking love 15. But like not even that is
yeah,
like,
me
nah,
too.
dude. It's like, nah, dude, I can't justify it. It's too broken.
Well, it's so Arden. So I was always on the fence about the city. I had played the demo. I had played like bits and pieces with friends, and I'm just like, this game. It's not what Dissidia meant to me as a fan, nor is it like a game where I was like, I would play this nonstop, which is what I would do with a regular Dissidia game. So I never committed to it. And then I got into the Final Fantasy trading card game, and then I like got out of it like just not fairly recently. But Arden was like the main reason why I was like, all right, like let's do it. Like I'm gonna do this because I love Darren Nepal. I love Final Fantasy 15. I'm super glad that I met the man, and I'm super glad that he sent me like a nice little thank you card with like his autograph on the back of his Arden card. Like I'll send a picture of it to you.
I think did you post a video on your channel? Like I think I saw you like did a video about it or something.
I did. It wasn't framed, so it's just like literally me like showing the card that he had sleeved. So I'll send you like the full thing that I did with it. But man, he's such an awesome guy, and I was like, I'm doing this for you. I'm doing this for you. I want to like this game, and it just wasn't enough.
So does that mean
it makes me
does
afraid.
that mean you're gonna buy Halo Infinite day one because he's the bad guy? He's the main voice of the bad guy.
No, because
you thought about it at least. That means you considered it.
There was probably an inkling of consideration there, but I don't know. Don't get me wrong. Like I like all of Darren's work, and I really like the types of like charismatic roles that he takes on. But I don't know. I feel like personally, in my opinion, as a fan of his, and just like Final Fantasy in general, like he brought his best performance with Arden specifically.
Yeah, like I remember seeing Kingsglaive in theaters, and like the fun fact, like he was like the only character from the game who reprised his role for the movie.
Oh, I know.
I just remember seeing him hamming it up and be like, man, this is a great character. I wonder how fucking weird he's gonna get in the full game. He got really fucking weird, man. Let me tell you, kids out there, don't listen to the hate. Final Fantasy 15, boy, that's a game and a half. Let me tell you.
It's great. I don't care what people think. I will defend that game. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, everybody is super entitled to their own opinions about what they consider to be like the best game in the franchise or like their favorite game. But like, I've had a conversation with a pretty like deep Final Fantasy friend of mine, and he will die for the 7 remake and just 7 in general, and I'm like, yeah, 15's better. Like,
bro, I'm playing the 15 DLC, not the 15 DLC. I'm playing the 7 DLC now with Yuffie. It is insane how good that game is. Like, I'm amazed how much I love FF7 Remake as much as I do. As someone who was I would never have called myself a Final Fantasy 7 fan before. I was one of those hipster kids who was like, nah, 8's better than 7, even though everyone booed me out of the room. So, like, the funny thing, though, is you mentioned that. I always have to ask because I feel like everyone forgot this DLC came out. Did you ever play Episode Arden?
Oh, absolutely. I got that the day it came out.
What an underrated, amazing piece of DLC, which...
Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing how good that DLC is.
And just shout out, by the way, to... how much of a good job Aaron does as the voice, but B, for the fact that the fucking battle theme is literally just being wrapped over by Lotus Juice for no reason.
I know.
It's like when that got announced, that was like the perfect like Spencer bait of like 15 DLC Arden and Lotus Juice. I'm like, I can't not love this now.
Just take my money. Man, it's so when that DLC came out, I was pretty like steeped in like the Final Fantasy 15 love and lore and everything like that. So I invested in the art books. I invested in what's the book called? It's like not canon anymore, and it makes me super sad. Dawn of the Future. I got that, and I got all this other stuff, and I was so shocked, just like how much more they had planned for that game, and just how much more they wanted to put into it, because the ending that they had would have been through Dawn of Sorrow, or I just said the name and I forgot it. Dawn of the Future.
By the way, in case anyone is not aware, this is how much left content was on the table for FF15. Square Enix published an entire book explaining how much, like a hardcover nice ass book full of concept stories and ideas that was going to be in the rest of the season pass for the second game season pass. And it was like, what other game has done that and B could do that. Like, it's just so insane to me. Like, I forgot that book exists. Like, I have it literally right next to me. It is a gorgeous fucking tome of what ifs. Like, I'm glad that exists at least instead of all of it being canceled, because I remember when they canceled all of that DLC and announced Episode Arden was the only thing coming, I was like, that hurt like so bad, because like everyone wanted episode Luna. Everyone wanted to see what was going to happen. Like how were they going to actually fix or finish this game?
Oh, it wasn't just that. It was like they had episode Luna, they had episode Noctis, they had episode Aranea, they had an episode called The Dawn of the Future that was supposed to be what happens in the book, where all the gang gets together and they fight Bahamut because Bahamut's a piece of shit. Like, that would have been such a better ending, and they were just like, nope, we're done. We're not making anything.
I can just get one person listening to this to just pick up and play FF15, it's such a good game. It's not a great game. It's just such a good, like, seriously, I think I'd have to go, because I really want to replay now that I have it on PS5 again. But I'll say this, like, makes it a little easier of an asterisk. Until I played FF7 Remake, it is my favorite Final Fantasy game of all time, with warts and all. Like, that's how good that whole world was for me.
That is super valid, and I 100% agree.
Also, if you want a really dumb, easy recommendation, Kingsglaive is on Netflix, and that movie still holds up 100%.
No, trust me. Like, I own it, and it came with the steel book for the Royal Edition, I think, that has that crazy, like, a mono.
It was the Royal Edition and the Deluxe Edition, but did you know they actually released a just regular steelbook edition of Kingsglaive before 15 came out?
I think I did. I don't remember what it looks like, so it's quite possible that I did.
The cool part about that one is it's the shot of General Glocker and Aaron Paul, why am I forgetting your name? And Nyx fighting with all of the Titans and stuff in the background of the city, while like Luna Freya is there. But the cool thing about that the Blu-ray release, was that it's the movie on Blu-ray, which everyone has through the Deluxe Edition or Special Edition, but the other DVD was all of Brotherhood as a physical copy. So it was all of Brotherhood in English with I think it either had extended scenes or something of a. So that was the only way to get Brotherhood as a American release.
That's pretty cool. I did not know about that.
Yeah, a lot of 15 merch out there, everybody. Prepare your wallets. There's a lot of things you have to embarrass.
Dude. Really, like, last thing I promise. I think it is bananas that during the promotion of that game, you had the chance of winning the fucking Regalia. Like, a real car just looked like the Regalia. And it was valued at, like, 1.3 million. No, ridiculous high amounts. It was, like, over $1 million. It was, like, the most, it's gone on record of being, like, the most, like, expensive piece of video game merch that somebody out there owns. I have no idea who does, but somebody apparently owns that car, and it makes me sad.
Jordan, one day we will find an excuse to start our Final Fantasy 15 fan cast. One day.
I'm going to hold you to it.
So, the last question I was going to ask you, I think 9 hours ago, was, before we get into SP5, because you've been playing Nocturne Remaster, where are you at with that now? I'd kind of love to pick your brain about, like, how you're feeling about it, where you're at with it, and just general thoughts, because I've enjoyed... I've been hearing a lot of people playing this game for the first time, whether they're new fans of the series or just never got a chance to play it on PS2, but it's been really fun talking to people who just played the crap out of it on PS2, finally coming back to it now.
Yeah, so I definitely think that if you've never played Nocturne, I think that this is an excellent thing for those types of people who have just never experienced Nocturne before, and just how important and influential it is in the franchise. So I think it's super cool that this is now available to that area of gamers and just fans in general. As somebody who played the original PS2 version and just kind of went from there with the series, it's complicated. Like, I really like it. I can obviously tell that Atlas cared. They obviously showed that they wanted to make this like a really good experience for not just the fans who have played it before, but newcomers too. But there were definitely times where I was just like, a lot more could have been done. Like, for example, something that I've always hated in Atlas games, especially like newer ones, because for whenever they introduce like voice acting as like an added feature to something, it typically is either all like everything has a voice, or everything but only the main characters do, or just nobody's voice acted for certain parts of it. So Nocturne fell into that, and there were so many times where I'm like, I want to know what this demon's going to sound like because it's a boss, and it doesn't happen. Like, the weirdest thing that I think back on it now, it's like the only boss that I think that has a voice aside from like main characters that become bosses and Lucifer, the only boss that you fight, which is Fornius, is the only mainline boss aside from the Fiends that has a physical voice. And I always thought that was really weird. I don't know why they decided to change that. And there were some things that with like certain cutscenes that they clearly just like took and ported from the PS2 version, like the scene where Sakahagi gets Gira Makala to appear out of the ground. Looks really, really bad. I don't know if that is like different on the PS5, for example, but like was something.
Yeah, all those pre-rendered ones look really bad. But yeah, when Sakahagi summons him, that one I think I was streaming or was doing something. I literally just laughed. I laughed
Yeah, because
uncontrollably with how bad it looked.
It was really bad. Like, I thought something had happened. I thought that like maybe this was something that was like a bug, but I'm like, no, they just like for whatever reason, there are certain scenes like that where they just took the original like game file for it and did that with it. I don't know why, because like the rest of the game's cutscenes are totally fine. So why is this one so weird?
Yeah, it's really weird, especially because there are a lot of in-game cutscenes that look nice by comparison. They just took anything that was pre-rendered. They just did a copy and paste of those MP4 files. And the funny thing about it was, like, they could easily just go in and make those cutscenes with the models. Like, the funny thing about Nocturne is when it uses pre-rendered, it almost doesn't make sense sometimes. Because it's like, you could have just done this in engine. I don't know why this was pre-rendered for whatever reason. Like, maybe it looked funky or whatever at the time. But, like, there are a lot of scenes of, like, when you'll see something coming out of the ground, and then it doing the really cool thing is in engine. But no, it coming out of the ground had to be, like, pre-rendered. Like, the funny thing I always think of is, have you beaten or gotten to any of the endings yet?
Yeah, I just finished. I finished True Demon, and then I did the ending. I think it's like the Freedom ending with your teacher.
Okay, so like hilariously, those are the only ones that actually look good because they're for the most part not pre-rendered. Besides a couple of scenes, all of the normal endings of like talking to your friends or like having like like it's just you in the desert with them or like them talking to you and then the city like kind of blows up in the background. It looks gorgeous, and then like for 5 seconds at the end when they have to show a city kind of starting to rise out of the ground, they have to do that pre-rendered. So it's like they have all these really gorgeous shots, but just for whatever reason, like it's just kind of sad because for the most part it was like, well, they could do it, they just probably didn't have the money to do it. And also, quick correction though, I do 100% get what you mean about the bosses. It is not all but Fortuna's, like, it's very rare, though. Because, like, the three sisters in the Obelisk Tower, like, the Scissor Sisters, they're all voiced, but, like, the ones who you think should be voiced are, like, so weird of, like, why is no one at the Amala Temple voiced? Why is Black Frost not voiced? Like, you voiced Mara, but you didn't voice Black Frost. Like, so many weird things that didn't make sense.
Well, so, exactly, that's exactly my thought. Something that I didn't even think about until fairly like obviously just now, Pixie doesn't like have a voice when you initially recruit her, right? Because when I went to the area in the Labyrinth of Amala where she turns into the Super Pixie, she actually does have a voice and has like her little intro and everything like that. And I was like, and I was trying to think back. I'm like, was that not in the very beginning of the game? Because for whatever reason, I'm like, I don't think that was. And if it wasn't, why are they doing it now?
Yeah, it's really weird. When you meet Pixie, Pixie will do the ha ha ha, like the little normal I'm not talking noise. But yes, when you do Super
Yeah.
Pixie, for whatever reason, they keep the no, let's not voice the mandatory section where you meet Pixie, but let's voice the thing that if you keep her into this late game dungeon, that's voiced.
Exactly. And I was like, am I crazy? Like, why did they do this? And I don't know. I guess it does just come down to like money, where it's like, well, we have enough money to do this, but can't do this then.
Yeah, like that's what's been so funny about talking to people who've been working on the English dub for it, of like they knocked it out in like a week, dude. Like people who came in to like record their characters did a day, two max, and then like for the most part like it was just very quick, get it easy. Because like when you look at the credits, the amount of actors who came in for it, it's very very tiny.
Yeah, it is. So speaking of that, so while I don't think that Goto being Ray Chase was like his best role, I appreciate it, because for the longest time before the remaster came out, I was thinking, I was like, well, so if they're gonna bring Raito into the mix, like, are they gonna do the thing where they just carried him over from the Soul Hackers remake, where he's voiced by not Troy Baker, whatever his name is, Matthew Mercer. I didn't know if they were gonna do that, but one thing that I thought was really cool, and I don't think that it's in the original Japanese Maniacs version where you can get Raito, but I thought it was kind of cool that when you finish True Demon with Raito, there's like a little like investigative report that Goto talks about, like foretelling a possible like future with the Demi Fiend and everything like that. I thought that was pretty cool, and I just didn't know if that was like a thing that was in the other version or if this is like just for this, but I just thought that was kind of cool. Like they didn't need to do that, but it did.
Oh yeah, that was I thought a really really great thing to add into it. The only other like hilarious part about that is that's kind of like it does answer the like, giant elephant in the room though of just like the funniest part about it is just like, hey, so this guy who's like from 400 years in the past but got brought to the future like randomly, so yeah, when you bring him into the world ending forever, I guess I guess him and his cat and typewriter exist for some reason.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, I appreciated having that in there for sure. With it and stuff. So now that you've kind of beat it a couple times, do you think you're gonna mess around with it a little bit more? Do you maybe think about picking it over? Because like my thing with it was like I loved going back to it. I thought it was really fun to play it again, especially in a new system. But it was one of those funny things that I kept telling people like the more I played it to platinum it, like just kind of like just do it to finally beat it and be over with it, the less fun I was having like going back, getting all the multiple endings, getting all the demons like that. I found zero fun once I had to start repeating content. Like going through, doing all the optional bosses, doing all the like stuff I'd never even seen before. Like I never even knew, like I probably knew it was there, but I'd never done it on my own personal free time. Like I never got all the Magatamas before. So I never knew about that final like 25th dungeon. Like 25th dungeon, like that little
Mm-hmm.
dungeon you have to go to get the last Magatama, and like I never really did that before. So like stuff like that was fun experiencing for the first time, getting all the endings myself and not just watching them online. Like that was a really cool, interesting thing to do. But then once it came to okay, rinse, repeat, and do this for like another 50 hours, is like okay, I would not recommend someone do this unless they're very, very much in a hurry.
No, I agree. That's definitely like my approach to it too. Is like probably once I go back and just platinum it, I'm probably not going to touch it for like another 5 or so years, just because like at that point it's like you've played well over at this point like 100 hours of content, and it's not new content, not all of it's new content, but you've accumulated over 100 hours of gameplay from stuff you've already experienced before, and that's exactly like my thing too. It'd be one thing if like there was a different story plot that happened aside from just like the literal ending cutscene you get with these characters that you haven't chosen before on this playthrough. But it'd be different if like you went through different dungeons or you fought different bosses, or I don't know, just something like that. So I'm definitely of the mind where once you finished it at least twice, and I definitely recommend for those who haven't like played the game and want to get into it and like platinum this game, for those who are those types of gamers, you got to do True Demon first, because nothing is worse than finishing your first playthrough or leaving it for last and then going through the Labyrinth of Amala as your like. Well, I guess it makes sense. It's like a climactic thing, but like, I don't know. It just doesn't seem to make sense for me as a person to leave the longest dungeon for last. But that's just me. But yeah, I don't. Because what's going to happen for me is like, great, I got to go through all these tunnels again with Lightoma. I have to go through the obelisk again. I have to go through the Black Temple, the Red Temple, and the Light Temple again. I have to go through Kagutsuchi again, which granted, it's not as bad as like other prior like SMT final dungeons, but you get my point. Like, there's a lot of like running around and a lot of like skill usage that you just don't want to keep doing over and over again.
Oh yeah, 100%. And like, I remember by the time finishing Kagutsuchi my first time, I was like, oh my god, this, like, the more I kept playing it, the more problems I kept finding with the dungeon. Like, it wasn't annoying to go through, but I just kept finding other weird things of just like, I thought like the way it was paced out was so weird, and so many little like weird things I learned about it just through repetition of playing it over and over and over and over. I will say, I think it's very interesting. You're the first person I've heard recommend do True Demon Ending first, which I think True Demon Ending first definitely makes the most sense in terms of get the most bang for your buck. But for me, I find that ending as a narrative really underwhelming. So like, I think it's been more fun of like, for my first playthrough, I did I ended up with Chiaki, even though I technically it was just neutral. And the reason behind that was like, I wanted to just play through it normally as kind of close to vanilla as possible. I wanted to ignore all the fiends. I wanted to ignore as much of the Kalpas as possible. I wanted to kind of try and see what it was like to play the original vanilla version of Nocturne. And what was so funny about that was, it was like, oh, this ending at least feels like an ending. Whereas True Demon Ending just feels like a cliffhanger that's never going to get answered. You know what I mean?
No, I agree. It definitely leaves you with that like a little bittersweet. Because for me, for example, with prior to playing True Demon Ending and going into like Apocalypse, for example, if you were somebody who played the DLC and like got all the protagonists together, for me, up until like getting True Demon Ending for the first time, just as a fan, because I didn't get True Demon Ending like the first couple times I played on the PS2 or even like buying it on the PS3 when it came out. I was like, well, in my mind, especially for those who have made like their own SMT timelines, I feel like a large amount of people are like, yeah, True Demon Ending is like the quote unquote canon ending for Nocturne. So when the DLC came out, I was like, all right, well, it kind of basically confirms that was the timeline that they were going with, essentially. So in my mind, I guess it just made sense to like play through that, do it, experience it, because it's leading into this bigger narrative that we may or may not see.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah, for sure. And I mean, like, the best part about it too is like, you can still go through all of the Kalpas and stuff and fight all the fiends without having to do True Demon Ending as well. And the best part about that is like, just make a bajillion save slots. Like, they have like those 20 save slots for a reason. Like, seriously, by the time I had platinumed the game, I used every single save slot for something. Just because otherwise you're gonna have to be repeating even more content, like way more than you thought. Like, for everything I did, I actually only did a New Game Plus playthrough once, funnily enough. Although I will say, Jesus, it was very hilarious to just steamroll through a New Game Plus ending with the normal demon ending, which is probably easily agreeable, I would assume, to most folks as the worst ending, just in terms of
Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah, there's no final boss, and it just is the ending. But for that to be my final ending for the Platinum felt very satisfying, because that meant I just steamrolled everyone with my level 99, like Metatron, Beelzebub, and like Vishnu, and then just like, I think I beat it in like less than 10 hours. So it was like, oh, this was fantastic.
Yeah, I get that for sure. Because I think the biggest issue for me whenever I would like replay it after finishing it for the first, second, or third time is like, okay, I can either do one of two things here. I can either literally build my team from the ground up again and spend 30 hours doing that, or I can go into my compendium, spend a little bit of money, and literally just like make this game 10 times easier on myself.
Mm-hmm. Now, for you, the only other kind of like Nocturne question I'd be curious about is, did you mess around with any of the DLC at all?
So to master the Magatamas and to get my main character all the way, like have his stats maxed, that's what I did for that, just because I was like, if I'm gonna do this normally, like I can do this two ways. I can either farm normally, or I can go and do the DLC and do this really quick because I don't want to spend another like 20 hours leveling up my protagonist and the Magatamas on top of that just to be able to get both of these trophies, and so I can get the last Magatama.
Mm-hmm. And for
But
you,
I haven't played the DLC with Dante. I've seen all of his scenes, and the fact that they got Ruben Lane is really cool. I think that was the best move they could have done. But I haven't actually like switched over to using Dante.
it's fine.
Let me actually say this before you. Let me say this really quick. I will say though, for what he's doing and for debatably / arguably his like most iconic and best character role, it kind of sounds like he's really lazy
Oh
playing
no,
this
yeah,
version of Dante.
100%. I was gonna say all of the Dante lines, because it is just that original text, they are really boring, especially by comparison of Raito. Like Raito's stuff has a lot like more character to it, I felt, and like interesting kind of world things to it. Whereas like I just felt like I was like laughing at a fan mod looking at Dante. Like
Mm-hmm.
it didn't like add to the experience, and the fact that it is like a paid thing I just thought was like so weird. But no, the other thing I wanted to ask you, just because I always like picking everyone's kind of brain for this, and you actually bought your own copy as well. Did you
Mm-hmm.
feel like it was worth the $50 at the end of the day?
No. Well, I don't know. I feel like it's really like it for me. I guess if I'm being like honest, it's just kind of like if I'm trying to give it like a term, there is no term for it. I want to say like a balanced feeling for it. Like on one hand, I do feel justified with it being this way, and I feel like I experienced what I was going to experience because I've already played the game like before, so I knew what I was getting into. But at the same time, on that merit, it's like I don't feel like it's worth that full amount because if you are somebody who's played the original game, there isn't there I'm sorry, there is no added content. Like technically, if you are somebody who knows the history of Nocturne and has played the game before, there isn't anything new here aside from the fact that now Western players can actually physically use Rhino now, for example. But there isn't like any actual new dungeon. There's no like extended final boss after Lucifer. There's there's no new demons, which I thought was kind of like bizarre. That was the biggest thing when I finished like the game. I was thinking to myself, I was like, this could have been like the perfect opportunity. Like you didn't have to do it, but this would have been the perfect opportunity to like bring newer demons into it. I don't know why. I just thought that would have been something cool to do. So in some ways, if you're a person who is looking for new content in this game, then like that this isn't worth that time or that money. I would wait until a price drop. But if you're somebody who likes the game like I did, because like I'll defend Nocturne to the end. Like I think it's a fantastic game. I just think that at the end of the day, they could have done a little bit more. I just feel like there could have been more done. I appreciate what they gave us, but I don't feel like that all of it was put, all the time that they had, and all like yeah, especially with how you said that they brought their actors in and they were done within a week. It's like if this game had more time or at least a bigger budget too in this case, I feel like a lot more could have been done. But like I'm happy with what we have too.
Mm-hmm. So 9 million years later, the half the reason I brought you in here, I am very excited to just kind of keep making this second chair a rotating chair of people's thoughts, opinions, and whatnot with SMT5, and I would love for this just kind of be a little open forum for you of where are you at? We've now seen 2 trailers, lots of gameplay, lots of new information in terms of like screenshots and information out there with like the Famitsu interviews and the live streams. So like in your headspace, especially as someone who's kind of been out of following everything religiously, like, where are you at in terms of whether it be your hype or just interest with SMT5 right now?
So I'll be honest. I'm very interested. I'm very curious, and I'm very excited to see what's going to happen, because on a lot of levels, looking at this game, it looks amazing. Like, there's so many aspects and detail in this game that make it look so good. The only thing that I personally, and like I know a lot of people do not agree, they made it a meme at this point, but the only thing that I'm not super big on in terms of like design factors is the protagonist's like altered look. I'm not super into it. I'm honestly not super into it. I think the whole thing could have been changed if his hair wasn't just gargantuanly cape-like long, but that's just me.
I'm going to tell you right now, if it was not for the hair's length, no one would be talking about this game on the mainstream side as much as they are. Nintendo
right.
themselves have tweeted about this game at least 10 times in the last week, and it's just about the fucking hair.
Oh my god. Well, I guess that makes sense. At least they got something to get people to talk about it. Like, I can dig the like light sword that comes out of his hand. Like, I think that's pretty cool. It's very like Demi-Fiend-esque, where he can just like shoot projectiles and like make energy appear out of his body, which I think like a couple people who have made like that kind of connection is like he does have these types of like Demi-Fiend-esque abilities.
Mm-hmm. Now, so I guess as to get like a bit of an idea in terms of like your thoughts, like how do you feel about Doi's other works in terms of other games? Like, have you been a fan of his works? Like, did you enjoy what he did with Apocalypse or other stuff like that? Like, where are you at coming to? Because I feel I've always been in the minority of I've always really enjoyed his take on demons and designs and other things for it, but it definitely wasn't always for everybody. Like, for you though, have you just kind of been neutral in terms of like his work? How do you feel about him leading 5 for the first time in terms of like a big new project?
So I'll say this, because he worked on, was it only Apocalypse, or did he also do work in regular 4?
He's done work since P2. He's been around for a really long time. But it's like
that's what I was thinking too, because I'm like, wait a minute. But yeah, okay, so yeah, I just wanted to get some background for that, because it's been a while since I've had to look into Doi's history. But so I was pretty neutral towards a lot of his contribution to the Persona aspects. It kind of just looked like he took the past designs that he was kind of like handed by Kazuma Kaneko and like turned it into his own, and did it in a way to that it both was, you can clearly tell that it's his work, but it's a like faithful like thank you to that sort of like pseudo-esque passing the torch design wise. So when it came to his art with Persona, I definitely like it. I have no qualms and no issue with it. I literally think he's just paying tribute to what came before it, which is like the best thing that you could do. Now, when it comes to his work on SMT5, or sorry, 4, I'll be honest, when I saw, because the biggest thing that I had is like, all right, I know that they're making like a big deal out of a lot of like mainline demons. It's one of the first times that Kazuma Kaneko is not like directly at the helm of the design category. He's still on board. He's just not the like head editor of this. So I was very skeptical. I was very like curious as to see what they were going to do. And I'll be honest, when it came to a lot of just his designs, I was like, I'm not. I feel like it could have been different. That's just me. I will say for the main cast, I liked it. I think it's really crisp and clean, very like new era-esque for the franchise. Because obviously, if you take Nocturne and compare it to SMT4, it's definitely a night and day, of course, but it's definitely in my mind that this is like the next generation of SMT, if that makes sense. So I've always been super on the fence about him with his ties in mainline or just games that preceded after Kaneko's era, but I've never kind of reached a point where I was like, this is a bad design. I don't like it. I don't think it should be here. I don't think that you should have been the artist in this aspect, which is super mean when I think about it. But like, I've never thought that like you need to be taken off the project. It's never come across that way.
Yeah, and I think actually one of the biggest factors about 5 that are maybe changing people's opinions if they were a little bit harsher to him is I feel like his style works much better in 3D than just 2D on like a tiny ass 3DS screen. Like, I think looking at his designs for demons that I wasn't crazy about before, like Mermaid is not new. Mermaid has been around for like I think it was Apocalypse is when Mermaid first got announced. And then like looking at Mermaid now in 3D, I'm like, oh my god, Mermaid has like it's so expressive. Like the animation is so much more well. Like even though hilariously Mermaid is not like this like amazing like majestic demon. Like literally Mermaid is always just on a rock surrounded by water, even if they are all in a desert. It looks very funny if you look at them all together bunched up. But it's like even just something like that. I think it's just the aspect of the art transitions a whole lot better. Like Nocturne, I think is probably that's tough. Nocturne was like an interesting one of like the first time they had to really transition like Kaneko's art into 3D. But even that, like, there's a lot of things that don't always like add up. A lot of things like looking a little jank. It definitely limited them with some demons. Like, geez, let me tell you, filling out that Nocturne compendium, you definitely get tired of just saying, oh, it's this demon but yellow now. Like, there's a lot of copy paste where like I don't think we're gonna get that with 5. I think it's just the way technology's kind of progressed. It's going to allow a lot more creative freedom and interesting looks, not only for the characters but also for like the world and stuff like that.
Yeah, I agree. I'm open to just ultimately seeing what he's going to do with it. I will say this though, when they initially were showcasing the Daily Demon Showcase, one of the earlier ones when they showed like the new design for Angel, I was like at first, because before they revealed that it was Angel, I was like, I'm not sure what this is, because it was one of the earliest designs that I saw when the game was being promoted. I was like, this is a really cool design. I don't know what demon this is. I can put like a theory to it, but I'm pretty interested in it. And then when it was revealed to be Angel, I was like, wow, not only do we have a new Angel design, but we have a new design that isn't the BDS Angel that we've had for like 20 plus years now.
Yeah, like we literally after what SMT2, it's just been that same design for almost like 10 plus games.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So I'm glad we're seeing stuff change, even something as simple as like he has his own take on Jack Frost. I enjoy that. Like we're changing things, obviously not for all 200 plus demons, but like I think it's been smart of how they've been rolling out the demons they're showing off. Like they're showing off demons we've seen before, but we're also seeing new ones, we're seeing new designs. It's feeling more like a breath of fresh air than I was worried, because even though they are copying some animations from previous games, like there are just straight up some animations from P5 that are just copy pasted here, which like, hey, it's fine. If Pokemon can fucking do it for 900 years, like SMT's allowed to be lazy and cut some corners. So like I think as long as it all looks and flows well in the world, which is like showing so far, I'm really really excited about it. And especially just at this point of like I hope there's at least more new than not. I hope it's not like, because I feel like for the last like almost like 2 decades, I feel like SMT games have just been like, here's the same Kaneko designs and maybe 1 or 2 are changed, you know? Like I want this to really kind of feel different. Like this is a new engine, it's a new generation, it's the first time they're doing 3D in over 18 years. Like really make it count for something.
No, I agree. And I definitely have felt that way for a while, because when you really think about it, and after all the SMT games that have come out, there hasn't really been a SMT game that universally brought a lot of the demons that are like game exclusive. And what I mean by that is like if you go look at SMT2, SMT2 has some of the like most underused demon designs and just underused demons that we have never seen since that game. And I think that that's like such a missed opportunity, because it's like not only can these benefit from being brought into newer titles, but it's like because they're so old and basically not relevant to some degree, it's giving you that creative leeway to really just kind of like go have fun with this. Like with we're gonna have to like throw some Stephen King references in here, but it's like, for example, with Christine with the car, it's like if you really wanted to, you could totally just take that and do like some kind of redesign with it. You can take Audrey 2 from Little Shop of Horrors and do something with that, or I don't know, just stuff like that. There's a lot of like opportunity here, and I definitely get what you're saying, because with every new SMT game that's come out, it always feels like they give off this like promotion of, oh hey, there is going to be like a ton of new demons, and it's like, okay, well, 5 new demons amongst 200 older demons doesn't quite like balance out the new versus old factor, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and especially when literally for the last couple of games it has just been them ripping the same sprites again and again and again and again. So, like, if the most laziest thing I've seen with the demons so far is, oh, Kate Sith has the same framework as P5R, a game that came out 2 years ago, but it still has a different shading, I'm like, that's fine. That is something that is fine. Even like if that's as lazy as I've seen so far, then I'm very happy.
Yeah, I get that for sure. It makes me think, since we're on the topic of it, a game that I haven't played like since its release, and then a couple like crossover events that they did, and a few other things like with I'm gonna butcher the name, but it's that SMT mobile game. I forget.
Oh, DX2?
Like Liberations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I occasionally still see like pages that I follow, or just like channels in general that talk about it, and see all like the like newer additions that the game is getting, and a lot of the like newer demons that it, well, quote unquote new, that they're adding into it.
Listen, it's got Sonic the Hedgehog now. We're clearly bearing the lead.
God, I was gonna get to that too, but I was like, oh my god, when I saw that popped up on my YouTube like subscription thing, I was like, this has to be a joke. Like, this is not real. Like, I refuse to believe that this is like real, because everybody, as soon as that came out, I don't think like a day went by before just mass meme edits of that were happening. I was like, this has to be a joke. This is such like a meme that this cannot be real. And then I started thinking, I was like, no, this is exactly what the Sega team would do, because they have creative rights over Atlas as a company. So they totally could. It makes sense, whatever. But back onto the topic of that, it's there's all these like newer additions to the roster that are getting added, and it's like that's not happening in the mainline game. So it's like, it's crazy to think that like a mobile game that I'd argue that like not too many people play now or are aware of anymore, is getting like that level of attention, where like the mainline games and like a full project cannot get that for some reason.
The joys of gacha, paying money, and marketing.
Oh my god, I have you, dude. When Alice got added, I sunk so much money into that game, and when it didn't happen, that's exactly when I put it down, because I'm like, I am not spending more money to not get this. And like, what I should have done at the time, I should have made a video about it, because I don't know if it's changed since then, but like in the pre-age of that game, when it came to like getting new skills or fusing stuff from the compendium that is new, or just getting certain things from like your gotcha switches and everything like that. A lot of it was just like a pain in the ass to do. Like, just to transfer one skill that you wanted required so much resource. And I know that's like nothing new to a gotcha game, because obviously it's pay to win, or it's paid to see like these things that you obviously want. But it's like, it was like ludicrous to the level of like how much they were expecting you to devote to this game just to do one thing that you really wanted to do.
I will say, it's really funny, like, I followed a lot of DX2's development and announcement before it came out. I even beta tested it for like 2 or 3 months.
Same.
And what was so funny is, like, once it was out, I was like, I just don't care. Like, I had to have like something in my brain,
dude, I
that
know.
just gotcha turns me off so hard. Like, I just, like, cannot be less interested in it, even if it's in, like, a series I talk about on a fucking daily basis. Like, they have, like, literally, they've added Dante from DMC5, they've added V, they've added Virgil, they've added fucking Bayonetta. They could add my wife into that game, and I still don't think I would check it out. Like, it's just not for me. I'm glad it's making the money. It's clearly doing enough, like, to have it go on, but, like, I just wonder, like, I feel like you don't hear a lot of SMT fans who are into DX2, where in like the same way,
No.
like it's just got to be like the Venn diagram for Gotcha fan, SMT fan, and just horny people who want to put money into their phones. Like it's got to be just such a small crossover because like I've got so many console games to sink my time into. Like DX2 does literally nothing I want to sink my time into. I'm not a huge fan of the art style. I think the story is
Yep.
laughable to call it a story.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
the demons are interesting, but guess what? So is looking at a JPEG of them on Twitter. Like, I get just as much enjoyment looking at them on Twitter as I would unlocking them.
That's very accurate. I will definitely give that to you in every way, shape, and form. I was gonna go off of that and be like, okay, so I'll just break the fourth wall and be like, to whoever hears what I'm about to say, if you can find somebody, or better yet, if you are somebody who considers DX2 to be your favorite SMT game, I want you to reevaluate your life.
You know there's
like,
someone out there.
I'm sorry.
That's someone's like first game in the series and they fucking love it. Like they just do the AR demon app thing all the time.
Like imagine the scenario of somebody who only has been exposed to this game and then handing them a Switch or handing them a DS or a controller and being like, so you know that franchise that you really like on your phone? Well, here's like the real deal stuff if you want to check it out. And they're just like, I hate this.
Oh, gross! I have to unlock
like,
them. I'm used to paying for my demons. This sucks.
Where's my paywall? Where is my off-brand art style? Where's my crossover?
I bet you there is like maybe one employee at Atlas Japan who cares about that game, because that's a Sega game. That's not an Atlas game.
Yeah.
That's a Sega game. Like there's no like I hear no like admiration for that team. Like that team is just making a mobile game to make money. Like it's like how I like, but like looking at other, it's not saying like that against all mobile games. I bet you there are tons of people who work on Grand Blue Fantasy or Fire Emblem who fucking love Fire Emblem and fucking love playing that. Who like love Sonic Rush, enjoy playing the fucking Sonic Dash game and stuff like that. Like, but it's just something about like that game. Every time I see it or anything about it, not like, oh, they're not fans, that's why I don't care for it. It's just one of those things of it just feels like Me Too syndrome, you know, like not the accusatory canceling people Me Too thing. It's like, oh, you're doing a game like this, okay, we'll do a game like this. Like that's just all it feels like.
Yeah. No, I agree. I definitely get the mentality of if it's working for somebody else, then like why don't we do it? Of course.
I think a good way to like talk about that. If DX2 gets canceled next year, there will be a month of people being sad, but we will not discuss it on this podcast. Maybe. Okay, maybe if it ends, I'll talk about it. But, like, the idea of covering, like, events or story updates in that game to me sound like I lost a bet. Like, I just cannot be bothered for it. Like, and it's not even like, oh, I don't like certain aspects. Like, trust me, if this podcast was going when Imagine was in its heyday, it would be the fucking SMT Imagine cast. Like, I played the shit out of that game. I love almost everything this series, like, touches. But, like, this has always been kind of like my final point when it comes to why I really just don't care for DX2. There's kind of a reason it's not called Shin Megami Tensei DX2.
Yeah. Yeah, it's true. It's actually, wow. You know, now that you mention that, that makes a lot more sense in hindsight.
But hey, DX2, you're doing your thing. You're making Sega money. God knows they fucking need it.
It's like, it has always just baffled me to no end that a company like Sega bought Atlas. Like when Atlas was just in a huge financial crisis, and they were like, we need somebody to buy us out in order for us to maintain a steady flow of being a company and continuing to do these projects that a very like niche fan group want. And it's just like, out of all the companies that could have picked them up, Sega is the one that picks them up.
You know, at the time it made the most sense. I'd actually like to do a video talking about that, because I feel like I'm always the outlier who, when it comes to talking about Sega and Atlas, I feel like people give them a lot of credit, like they're the same company they were when they bought each other. But like 2013 Sega was making games. They were publishing games. They were publishing weird games. They were making fucking Alien Isolation. Nowadays Sega doesn't have the budget to make the Alien Isolation's mobile game. Like, they are just such a different company of like, it's just like they've had to be so conservative about where they spend their money. It's literally like the unspoken rule in Japan is this: Atlas spends their money on SMT or Persona, and Sega Japan spends their money on Sonic or Yakuza. That's it. They are not allowed to do big budget projects for anything else, because when they do, guess what? They fucking tank. Look at Sakura Wars. Look at oh my god, just like so many other things. Like, they had a fucking Tokyo Olympics game that came out like in the last 2 weeks. Maybe 5 people bought that game. Like, it's just like they've got a lot of projects that just come out with very, like, it's either they come out because, oh, we can make a bunch of money out of this. Like, Sakura Wars didn't come out because of a love of the franchise. They thought, oh, hey, we're going to do a stage play, a drama, and an anime. We'll have these all line up, and then we'll make a game come out at the same time. It wasn't like, oh my god, we're bringing back this beloved Sega franchise, because guess what? It doesn't play like the original Sakura Wars. It's a totally different game. So it sucks that that's the world we live in. Like, even look at something like Virtua Fighter. Virtua Fighter came back. Virtua Fighter 5 Ultimate Showdown, or Virtua Fighter Esports as it's known in Japan, it's called that for a reason, because they literally just slapped the Yakuza engine on Virtua Fighter 5 and are charging $30 for a launch PlayStation 3 game from 2007. And that's cool they brought it back, but they clearly did the bare minimum necessary. Like the last time Sega has done something that was like, holy shit, that's a cool Sega move, is that new Super Monkey Ball. And they literally, all they have done is just put a PS2 game, a PS2 game, a GameCube game, and an Xbox game on modern platforms. Like, that's awesome. I'm gonna fucking buy it. But like, that's not like a Demon Souls remake. You look at a Demon Souls remake and you go, holy shit, they put a lot of effort into this. Monkey Ball coming out on new systems is like, cool. Thank you for finally learning how HD collections work.
Hey, man, you gotta give them credit. They did it. And they're just gonna keep doing it because Sega can't do anything. Like, as you've already made it clear, it's like Sega has no drive anymore. They don't have the capacity to make good games.
I will give them this. They're making interesting moves, though. This is an interesting year where my opinion on that might change. Like, the fact that they're publishing that Demon Slayer game, I think is a really interesting mix. I would not have expected them to try and do that. Like, Demon Slayer is a huge IP. That's not just like a regular cash-in game. That's like something on the scale of like those Naruto Ultimate Ninja Storm games, which sell a fuck ton of money. Like, Demon Slayer is a really big franchise. So like, hopefully they get into publishing, because I miss the days when they would publish and make weird fucking games. Like, I loved House of the Dead. I loved, like a good example is this. When people talk about Sega games that they love, they're normally talking about games that Sega couldn't be bothered to make themselves. Sonic Mania, not made by Sega. Streets of Rage 4, not made by Sega. Dragon Boy and the Wonder Boy, the Dragon's Trap, not made by Sega. Like, all of these things, even like Panzer Dragoon, the new House of the Dead remake, all of those not made or published by Sega. Like, there are so many Sega properties being used right now, but Sega's just licensing them out because they know they don't have any interest in making or publishing it themselves.
Right. Which, yeah, I mean, in the state of where their company is, I can definitely understand that a little bit more. I mean, I guess their choices to do what they're doing right now makes more sense, because obviously with the shoestring budgets that they have, it's like one thing. Like, I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to bank off of like a big one project, it falling through, and then the next thing we know, it's like, oh, Sega's like out of business.
Yeah, I mean, I will say, God bless Nintendo, because Nintendo has put a fuck ton of money into SMT5. Like, Atlas themselves, I can guarantee you, would not have made SMT5 a Switch exclusive and have it be looking this good if they didn't have Nintendo's like backing behind it. So
No.
everything we know was in terms of like the demand and the hype of where everything's at, I think it's coming out at a great time. Like, I'm sure that's going to make them a ton of money, and I hope that makes them reevaluate like what they do with systems. Because, man, let me fucking tell you, if in a year and a half from now Shin Megami Tensei 5 Director's Nocturne Cut Edition comes out, and all it has is like one or two extra features, and it's on PS4 and PS5, I'll fucking double dip. Why not? Yeah, like I am I want that kind of shit to happen. Like, I don't want them to be living in the fucking world of, hey, you know that PS3 game we have exclusive? Well, let's just leave it just on PS3, just because we're too fucking cheap to port it.
Right. So, if by some miracle, like, I'm just waiting for the day, and I doubt it's going to be anything like how I want it to, because in my mind, I want it to be very specific, but I want there to be some kind of day where Devil Summoner, all three Devil Summoner games need some kind of reboot, and I want the first three Persona games, being 1, 2, Innocent Sin, and Eternal Punishment. I want them to be like these like, I want them to be treated this way as like SMT5 is, but
so
I
not to be
don't
that guy. Are we just assuming? Are you leaving out a Devil Summoner, or did you just forget Soul Hackers?
No, I mean, so when I say that, I'm thinking of just, I didn't leave it out, but it's like they've already done something sort of, not really, but sort of recent with it.
You buy me a cheap copy of Soul Hackers right now, and I'll tell you it's out.
I'll do it. I'll do it right now.
Let me just go to eBay, get my cheapest copy. All right, $68 for a copy of dog just shit out. All right, I guess that's the best condition we could do right now.
So while you're mentioning that, it's kind of funny. So can you please fill me in at what point did Shin Megami Tensei games, from a certain era, obviously, at what point did they go from being dirt cheap and everybody can get their hands on it to, holy shit, these games are way higher price than they have ever been in 30 years?
So it literally started. Oh, hey, by the way, Soul Hackers, apparently someone found a fucking reserve of Soul Hackers copies. Because eBay has. Okay, I'm saying this as if it's a great deal. It's not actually a great deal. It's like double MSRP. There are copies brand new for like $80. I'm seeing.
That's not horrible.
Not.
Is it just the game, or is it the quote unquote like special edition?
No, these are all just the game and probably look like they've just been like heat shrink wrapped. But no, started last year. I'm planning on doing a video for it, but I've been kind of holding off for whatever reason because I'm trying to line this up because people don't know this, even though I keep fucking saying it all the time. Atlas can still print 3DS games. Like, as of now. So my hope is I'm going to try and line up the video either with an announcement or something coming along with it because the whole thing about 3DS prices, especially, because, like, the PS2 market never really blew up. Like, the PS2 games you can still buy super cheap. There's no, like, crazy price gouging on the PS3 stuff. The PS1 stuff was always kind of in its own weird, like, rare world. It's really just the, Vita games aren't even really fair. P4G just got rare because everything Vita got rare, so that's not really fair to just that. But, like, 3DS stuff, not all 3DS stuff got rare. It's specifically just Atlas 3DS stuff got stupid rare. Because for whatever reason last year when the pandemic hit, that was just something that really kind of ballooned. And even before SMT5 news really came out, for whatever reason you were just seeing copies of stuff like Devil Survivor, SMT4, all these games going for like over 100. It was like insane.
So it's literally just that bubble effect of when this happened. All, like, for example, all the Switches were sold out for basically the whole span of the pandemic. Mm-hmm. That was kind of the rippling effect. That makes sense, but I was like, because I remember because I didn't even think of like the pandemic. It made sense for the Switch because at the time, like, people were stuck in home and couldn't do anything. So it's like, what are you going to do for people who can't do anything aside from I don't know, read the paper or go on your phone. You're going to pull out your Switch or 3DS and you're going to play a fucking game.
Yeah. Well, I have one last question I want to ask you, and then we'll get into real questions, because by some miracle, we've been talking for, oh my god, how long has it been now? Almost an hour and 40 minutes. So I got one more SMT5 question for you, but it's more kind of like a general question. So for you, how much do you actually play your Switch? Because for me, my Switch is very much the exclusives machine, and this is going to be like the first fall, not even just because of SMT5, but like with various different titles coming out, like Metroid, like Advance Wars, like SMT, like No More Heroes. Like, I'm going to be playing my Switch probably more this fall than like my PS5, outside, at least in terms of there's more exclusives coming out.
So I'm kind of in the same boat. So way back when SMT5 was announced, and it wasn't confirmed at the time of what platform it was going to be on. We just knew that it was going to be a console game. I wasn't super keen on the fact that it was going to be a Switch exclusive. So for the longest time, since we weren't getting any news, I was like, well, SMT5, aside from like a couple party games that I play with my girlfriend and her friends, like I'm not super big on the Switch. Like I don't play it pretty religiously like some people do. Like I literally, I think the most that I had played it was when the pandemic happened, because everybody was like, you gotta get Animal Crossing, like we're all gonna play it. And I was like, I played it, and like I think I played it for maybe like a few weeks, and then I was just like, I'm bored. Like, I'm sorry. There's people that play this game for like 600 hours, and it's like I can't even play it for 60. So I don't know. Maybe it's just me, but it didn't catch on with me. But regardless, finding out that it was a Switch exclusive, I was thinking to myself, well, when this game comes out, I will play my Switch exclusively for this game. Like, I don't think that there is currently anything that I'm super looking forward to aside from this game being on the Switch, or there isn't anything at the moment that is on the Switch that I kind of want to devote like a handful of hours to. So that's kind of where my mind was for the longest time, and it still kind of is. But this is definitely going to be like the most attention my Switch has gotten in like a very, very long time, and you know, like I'm excited for it. Like I'm really excited. It's just like aside from that, I wasn't super into doing anything with it. Like I've gotten into an argument with a friend of mine recently where they said like, well, what's your favorite like Nintendo current gen quote unquote Nintendo like system? And I was like, oh, the 3DS, because like there's a ton of like amazing games on the 3DS. And they're like, well, you should really think that the Switch is better because whatever. And I'm just like, I'm sorry, but as somebody who doesn't currently like everything that was on the market that I had an interest in, I already physically owned on my 3DS, so it's like I wasn't going to rebuy those. I did, but I wasn't really going to rebuy them. And I don't know, I just haven't been like, I know there's people that will die by the Switch, but I haven't really considered it to be like the thing that was supposed to kill the 3DS in my mind, if that makes sense.
No, that was Nintendo. Nintendo just killed it on their own by not making anything for it anymore.
Yeah. Well, because aside from like every day that I wake up, and aside from SMT5, I'm like, can Nintendo just make something that isn't like a port or a remaster that like just gets me? Like just me as a gamer and as a person, can you just make something, anything, so I can put this life, there's a term for it, this life support on my Switch so I can boot it up and play it? Like, where are my games?
It's like the exact same people who are like, why are we begging for Wii U ports into the 5th year of the Switch? Like, those should have just all come by now.
Right. Well, it makes me wonder, like, once Nintendo like doesn't see the need for any more Switch games or anything like that, like I'm assuming obviously they're going to move on to another thing, and we're going to very slowly see like an incline of games, but it's not going to be to like the same level where it's like there's this, like when you get the system, it's like there's this, and this, and the list goes on. It's going to be like a very slow, like, okay, this is going to come out, then this is going to come out, and then this is going to come out. But until then, you have to deal with this.
Yeah, it's such a weird thing with it, especially like I can't, like I know people who only use the Switch, but like it kind of like blows my mind in the sense though of like I can't imagine myself of just saying like, okay, I'm dropping all of my things just for this system. Like it would be like a very like different experience of just like, and this is coming from someone who literally plays his fucking Vita every day. So like I'm used to like playing like fucking old ass ports, but it's just with the Switch it just never really kind of called to me in the same way that it does for like the majority of other people. But like I mean, hey, there's clearly that market, and I mean Nintendo, for whatever, whether it be on purpose or not, this at least is going to be their fucking year of like, hey, if you want really fucking obscure exclusives, we fucking got them.
No, exactly. I literally think that I'm not saying that the pandemic is a good thing, but it's like in terms of getting people invested in Nintendo's products, games, and just giving them money, this was literally like the best thing, unfortunately, that happened to Nintendo.
Oh my god, yeah, especially with just like how many they have just been selling like consistently more and more and more, like with the collector's edition fiasco going on of like people being like, oh my god, why is it selling out so fast? I've had to keep telling people, I'm like, do you guys not know how fucking big Switch is? Like, people who are buying SMT5's collector's edition just because it is a Switch exclusive. Like, it just being on the Switch is like radiating like hot bitch energy, basically. It's like people are just fucking like, oh, I gotta get those Switch exclusives, man.
Exactly. Well, because yeah, I'm like, well, if so, it's one thing to promote a game and make it cross-platform. It's another thing to directly link it and daisy chain it to a system, which there's nothing inherently wrong with that. It's just like you got to be aware that obviously if it's only going to be on this one system, it's going to be super limited. Tons of people are going to want it, and you got to be able to supply, because if you're not, then obviously there's going to be situations like this.
So, on a similar note, I'm very excited about our first question. So, our first question comes from the Facebook group, is by Ian. Ian asks, and I love this because I've thought about this a lot before, but I'm curious what you think. What are the chances of us ever getting Minecraft DLC for SMT or Persona? Because I've thought about this before, not with Minecraft a lot.
Oh my god.
But something I want to jump off of. I believe, not even believe, I am willing this into existence. In the next year, there will be some Atlas DLC in Fortnite. I just can't believe that it won't happen.
Yeah, I can pretty much agree to that too. Like, and it's kind of crazy that like it didn't happen when like Persona 5 blew up. Like I was kind of like, now that you mention that, it's like, wow, like they actually didn't like shell out a little bit of money for that, because they are notorious for just being like, oh, a popular video game franchise or a popular video game is doing really well. Well, let's move it over here, and then more people are going to want to buy it because obviously got to get that skin, got to get that. Like,
I think they wanted to wait for 5 because 5 is literally being made on the same engine because they're both made on UE4. So like I think it's easier to have like a crossover there, even if it's like, hey, Switch owners, here you go do this. Although, oh my god, if like it's a just, I mean, if it's on Fortnite, it's on all the systems. If we live in a world where we could get like, I think if they did costumes, they would have to do like, to make brand sense, it would be like, okay, obviously you get Nahabino, and then you get Joker, but it would just be just so funny of just like just seeing them running around with like fucking Ryu, Chun-Li, Lara Croft, and Master Chief and Kratos. It'd just be like, what fucking hilarious like nightmarescape we live in. But the reason I mentioned Fortnite when it was asking about Minecraft, I think Minecraft is like a little harder to get into. Like Minecraft, I feel like you really gotta like pay Minecraft to do it. Whereas Fortnite, I feel like Fortnite goes out to everybody, and it's like, hey, we'll pay you to put this in our game, you know?
Because they're trying to stay relevant. Like, everybody doesn't want to agree that they're not really relevant, but they're not as relevant as they ever used to be. Like, what being relevant and being like popular are like two different things, if that makes sense. Like, on one hand, yes, they make money. Yes, there is obviously that area of gamers that are buying this game and playing it till no end. But in terms of like the general gamer that is like pretty like diverse in what is going on in the world today, they're not investing hours and hours of time and money into Fortnite. Like they're busy doing other things that are more important.
Yeah, so then the $10 question in the room: if they added SMT or Persona to Fortnite, would you buy that skin? I'm legally obligated. I'd have to buy it. I wouldn't have a chance not to buy it. It would just be like, no, I have to do this.
I gonna be honest, it's gonna be a hot pass. I'm sorry. Like I will go to my grave with every physical SMT game property that I've ever owned and just put it in my casket and dump a bunch of cement inside so nobody can take it. But I'm not gonna stoop that low. Like I have standards.
Now to bring this back to Minecraft, did you buy the Final Fantasy 10? No, the Final Fantasy 15 Minecraft skin. It's a safe space. You can admit it's okay.
I did, unfortunately.
If you want to
Just
like
that one time.
You know what? I think I've just gotten the best use for. I was like, how do I incorporate 15 into this episode art somehow? I'm just gonna put Minecraft Arden somewhere on the episode art for this because Minecraft Arden is such a unique level of cursed content. Like I just can't express it without showing you because it looks like a shit post. Like it looks like, oh, that's right. No, no, no.
Yeah.
It's real. Like they all look weird, but Arden especially looks hilarious because of how much like layered clothing he has.
Yeah, right.
Oh my god. Well, thank you for the good DLC question. I always appreciate like crossover potential stuff with it. Next couple questions come from YouTube. So the first one is, when do you think Europe? Oh, this is also by Ushi Ushi Kaku the second. Says, when do you think Europe will be getting their collector's editions? Keeping in mind that Nintendo in Europe is the publisher for all those regions, and so presumably it's out of Atlus's hands, which you are correct. And so far they've only mentioned it on their Twitter. So for you, Jordan, do you like have any kind of guess? I know like let's have like the two Americans guess when Europeans are getting their collector's editions, but like if you had to kind of like pick a date, like how long do you think until they really know? Like my guess is by the beginning of July. I can't imagine they keep people going for a whole month.
Yeah, I mean, so given the past track history that we've talked about, I was going to throw the joke question out there of just like the year of never, because for whatever reason, like all said, like they always somehow get shafted, some way, shape, or form.
It's like, listen,
right.
we said we'd announce it. I never said I'd let you buy
it. Yeah, exactly. Show and not tell is the true market of success. But in this case, since it is a very different and very special chain of events, I would probably guess around the same time, maybe if like worst case scenario, it may be like a 2-month period, but at least that's like a huge saving grace compared to like the years that they've been like hounding for content that they've just never had.
Yeah, plus I'm in the camp of like honestly right now the like place we're at with the collector's edition is Atlus in the West is just begging Japan to let them produce more. So like as long as they can just make as fucking many as possible, drown the market. I don't need this thing to be fucking rare. I just want one for myself and everyone out there who wants one. So like,
well, exactly.
like
so
I own like I
say
take
that.
no pride when I own something that no one else can buy because that's just a shitty thing, you know. Like I enjoy like, oh hey, here's the thing I really like, and I want someone to be like, oh cool, where can I get it? And I just link you to it. Like I don't need to fucking own a $100 million game that like sold out 100 years ago.
So going back to it, it's funny that you say that because like when the issue was happening with the collector's edition, it still is now. When it was first happening, all I was seeing was a bunch of comments just saying like, man, this is the first and only collector's edition I'm gonna miss from Atlus because of this problem, or I'm I'm really glad that somebody out there was able to get their collector's edition. I just really hope that they're able to like restock, because like I was really looking forward to this, and I was like really late to the party, and it's like that sucks. But at the same time, I'm also like I'm like the dick mindset where it's like I semi take some kind of merit from owning like rare collectibles that most people probably won't be able to get. Like right now it's with music. It's like I have a bunch of vinyls that like are limited to like 100 copies, for example, and like people within that community are always like, oh, like I can't believe like you got this. I'm trying to find it for years. Like I go on this website and they just don't even have it, and it's like I don't know. That's kind of me, and that's kind of how it was with when I was building the collection and like talking about it through my Alice page. I was just like, yeah, there's this, and like if you want to try to get it, like you can definitely try, but I can't guarantee that there's going to be these for around that long. And then occasionally there would be somebody who would get mad because they're like, well, you said that you'd be able to get this. It's like, I never said that I'd be able to get it. I just said that this is how I got it, and you can try, but I can't predict what is and what isn't going to sell.
Yeah, it's like I hate sharing when, oh hey, pre-orders are up now for blah blah blah, and then I swear every time I post it, it's like 5 minutes later they're out. I'm like, God damn it.
Yep, exactly. It's a lose-lose situation, to be honest.
So next question comes from every app wanting to close out as soon as I open it, which is tradition. Jared Michael Fox, who says, guest characters like Dante, Virgil, or Bayonetta, or someone else you would rather want to see in SMT5. And if a guest character is available, would you want them to be DLC or part of the base game? Whatever you prefer.
Ooh, that's a good game, actually. Good game. Good question. Can't talk. Man, I mean, there's two ways of taking this as I think about it. Like on one hand, you could do the thing that I really would like, and that would be like taking older SMT characters and just bringing them into the narrative of a newer game. Like I feel like at least at one point, like every fan has kind of been like, wouldn't it be cool if they brought back so and so, or would it be cool if they did this? And it's like, yeah, like absolutely. For me, I really like in that regard, like I would love for the Devil Survivor 1 cast to come back, as well as I want Kyoji from Devil Summoner 1 to come back in some way, shape, or form. Mm-hmm. Because while Raito is doing this and is able to dimension hop, it's like this guy was also able to do that, and we just haven't heard anything of it. In terms of like guest characters from cross-platform franchises, that's a hard one. I'd honestly like have to think about it for a sec.
No, I mean like it's tough. Like the way I always kind of go with it is like I like the idea of guest characters, but I think anyone I could come up with as a guest or who I'd want to see, I think would be boring for the most part. Like, I want to be surprised. Like, back when Nocturne came out, no one expected Dante. Like, Dante was a weird fit, but it worked. Like, I want to really kind of... Like, it's like when it comes to Smash reveals. I don't predict who's coming to Smash, because then as soon as I predict, there's either that chance of disappointment or, oh, whatever, I saw it coming. Like, I was never expecting Kazuya. I was never expecting Steve for Minecraft. I was never expecting Joker from Smash. So it's like, all of those things, like, it's fun to kind of be surprised. That's where I'm always at with the guest characters. Also, in terms of, like, what do, like, DLC or base game, please base game. The less DLC, the better. There's no chance where them adding DLC to this game is going to make it look good on any level.
No, I agree. Like, it's one thing. So Atlas has done this for a long time now. It's like I get the use and I get the need for giving people a DLC for a difficulty. I don't agree with it, but I mean, I guess I get it. And then on the other hand, there's the DLCs that give you more money, more levels. Like there's this, and there's that. But like honestly, I feel like SMT4 was like the worst offender in that regard, aside from Apocalypse, where like the DLC was so much more cost-wise than what you actually got out of it.
I can tell how little Persona 5 Royal you've played by that sentence.
Well, so here's the thing. I own it. It's shrink-wrapped. It's never been opened. It's just sitting right there, and I've just never like taken the opportunity to like go through the DLC page.
That's okay.
Like I know it's bad.
Avoid it like the plague. The less you know about it, the better. I want you to know I was the first person in the world to buy all of the DLC. I bought the I Hate My Fucking Life $60 bundle version apparently, and I posted an image immediately of me giving it a 1 star, and I said, I'm buying this to get footage, don't be like me. Like, I'm doing this for the review purpose, no one else buy this, please.
Yeah. Dude, it's so funny to have, like, major content creators reviewing, like, a bad game, for example, and they'll be like, I know that this is a bad game, so don't put in the comments of my videos that this is bad. I am prefacing this because I'm doing this so you don't have to. Like, I think that is the best thing that a content creator can do, because it's like, not only do they not want to buy it for, like, obviously this is a rare case where like you wanted to get it because obviously, but there's those cases where it's like people are like, I don't want to buy this. I have no interest. I know I shouldn't. I did not have an interest in buying this, nor did I have like the forethought to buy it. But I'm doing it so you can save your money and you're not going to do it.
Next question we have, how do you feel about the fiends and if they are going to be incorporated into the game? Do you have like a personal favorite in terms of it? I will say, I know that 5 has a lot of like similarities with Nocturne. I wouldn't know if I would want them to copy the fiends thing like verbatim, but at least for me in terms of a personal, I'm probably really biased because of how good the voice acting choice was for it, but man, Hellbiker makes me laugh really, really hard.
I knew it. I fucking knew you were gonna go for that. That was the fiend that I wanted to see the most before getting to him. I was like, oh man, I'm gonna see him. I'm gonna see fully talking, fully voice acted Nicolas Cage over here. And then I got to it and I was like, oh my fucking lord, my boy.
So for you though, do you have like a favorite or think you might want to see any of them pop up in 5?
So I'm assuming that he's only talking about the base fiends that appeared in Nocturne and not like the fiends, other fiend demons.
We can just talk all fiends in general, yeah.
Okay, because I was like, if you want to get technical, we can, but if you're just talking about the ones that we meet in that game, we can do it that way too. In terms of approaching it that way, I think it would be cool to do something because, like, I'm a sucker for when Shin Megami Tensei does things with its demons. Like, it actually like plays into the source material of their lore a little bit more than just being like, oh yeah, this is of course a demon that you can collect and fuse and whatever. Like, it's cool, obviously, but like when they go that little extra narrative mile to be like, all right, so this demon is here because of this. This plays into his background and like does this, and this, which is why, like, for example, in Apocalypse, I thought it was kind of cool, the narrative that the very small narrative that Metatron played there, as well as his role in Nocturne. And while he wasn't like a like direct hand in like the rest of the game's narrative, like you obviously knew he was there because he tells you not to do the thing in the progression of the True Demon ending, and then he meets you again saying like, hey, like I told you, like this is my role. I told you not to do this because if you do, it's going to lead you down this path of darkness and so on and so forth. So I'm a big fan of that. So if they did do something like that, I think it'd be cool. I agree that I don't think that they should literally like take the same approach that they did with Nocturne because obviously you've done it before and it'd just be cool to see it from a different lens. In terms of favorite, like let's just say I'll take it step by step here. In terms of favorite fiend in base Nocturne standard, I might be a little bit like term I'm looking for. It's when you're like predictable, I guess. Anyway, I really like Trumpeter. I've always liked Trumpeter, but in terms of like his voice in that game, like I thought that they could have done a little bit more. It just seemed like they went way more for the role with the other voice actors who played those fiends, but then you get to him and it's just like he's very laid back and doesn't really care about what he's doing.
Yeah, some of the fiends in Nocturne you can definitely tell they're just like reusing the same like one guy and be like, just do this but a little different.
Yeah, exactly. And then in terms of like just like, so I have like a double favorite for that, but it's either Trumpeter and Nocturne, or it's I just like Black Rider in the sense because like when it comes to like RPGs or just games in general, I'm like a big like ice user. Like I always think it's really cool. So the fact that he's like the ice cast of that game is really cool. And then just in terms of like bringing back like a fiend demon that we haven't seen in a while, like I'm not really sure. It probably would be Hellbiker in that case, just because you don't really see him all that often. Like, yeah, he obviously appeared in Persona 5, but like you don't really see him that much. Like his biggest role was in Nocturne. Like that's literally it. Or we could just be like Alice, but Alice is already a main staple, so it kind of doesn't count.
Mm-hmm. Let's see. Next one is by Tango Mango. It says, story-wise, do you think it'll be focusing more on law or chaos?
So initially, when I watched the trailer, the very first trailer, not the one that we have to go off of now, but the fact that you just see Lucifer back in his old look is because we haven't seen that since Nocturne. I was under the, well, because he makes it pretty clear God is dead, and now that we know from the latest trailer that we're not in the same Tokyo, which plays into that whole like alternate reality or alternate world timeline thing that Apocalypse kind of started. I think I'm pretty sure it's going to be pretty law based because we've already seen like a pretty fair amount of law aspects to the game, like the whole introduction of your I'm not super familiar if like the guy that comes down to the heavens and gives you his power like has a name or anything like that. I'm super sorry if he does, and I just haven't been paying attention. So when I saw that, I was like, all right, well, this definitely like plays into like a more law aspect. And if that is the case, I'm curious if they're going to do away with the neutral ending or just the neutral path in general, because over the past couple years, we've kind of seen that the neutral route, at least in my opinion, has kind of been portrayed as like the good, like the ideal ending. It is the ending that the game wants you to go for because these other endings make you feel like shit if you decide to do what you would have done if you played your standard SMT game. So if that is the case, I probably would go law, because looking at it, I don't know, it kind of gave off this more law feel. And then like I know LaRue kind of broke it down a little bit more, where it's like little details like such as the protagonist's design is like a very like holy-esque thing, along with the Book of Paradise Lost that he's reading apparently when he's walking like through the subway terminal and just stuff like that. So if it takes on a law aspect, I think that'd be kind of cool, because if it is trying to take up similar like cues from Nocturne was very chaotic with its portrayal and promotion. Like you can look up Nocturne art and you can see how like crimson and like destructive, chaotic it is, but like you look at this and it has like a totally different tone compared to what we've seen prior.
So, kind of answering another question and getting into it. So, you were talking about the mysterious man from above who comes down and transforms you. He does have a name, but we do know it is Aogami so far. So, Daily Dose of Vitamin C says, who the hell is Aogami, really? So, we don't actually know that much about him yet, outside of the fact that he forms a pact with the main character and combining to make Nahabino. I kind of feel like it's going to be a little bit of a twist on Dogda from Apocalypse, of instead of a demon coming to kind of transform you and shape your future, I feel like this is maybe a fallen angel from above, kind of helping you shape your journey in a way, as opposed to coming from it as like less of a demonic route and more of a like holy route, like hopefully getting a little bit more insight into what the hell the Great Will even is besides just glowy big face man.
Yeah, I'm hoping for that too. I agree that is a pretty good possibility now that you mention it. Yeah, I definitely agree that it does have like aspects of Dogda, because it can't just be a coincidence that our protagonist is put into a life and death scenario, and then like this outer being, a physical outer being comes in, is like, hey, like you're going to die if like you don't like take my help here in this case.
Mm-hmm. Next question by Cherry Pop and Ninja. Kind of going back to the guest characters, but do you want to have any optional bosses in SMT5, and are there any you'd want to see? I think getting into at least an optional boss who's like not like a guest character, I feel like there are too many comparisons in this game that like I don't know how you don't have a super fucking HD Demi-Fiend secret boss fight. Like make this boss fight make the DDS Demi-Fiend boss fight look like a cakewalk. Like I want it to be like super fucking soul crushingly hard. Like the one in DDS is already really fucking hard, but like I would love for it to just be like super old school. You've got to fucking master this game if you ever want to beat this guy, and he has like nothing comes from beating him outside of like maybe a cutscene, because like really when it comes to secret bosses, they're just there for like the bragging rights. Like the items you get from them are never worth it, because by the time you beat them, you already have to have basically mastered the game to get to that best point.
Exactly. And it's interesting that this gets brought up because aside from Demi-Fiend and aside from Satan from Digital Devil Saga, I honestly can't think of another time in the series history where we've had a boss that was that difficult. There has I mean I could be totally wrong, but in my extensive history, I have like from those points onward, there has never been a boss that is more difficult than that. So I agree. I think that it's time to kind of give a new taste of that, because if SMT used to be known as a very hard and just punishing franchise, like at least kind of bring that back a little bit for people who grew up with that, because part of the problem that I've been having recently too is like I'll go back and play these games and I'm just like I'll still see comments about certain games and they're always talking about how difficult and how they're never going to play this game because it's so hard and that makes it a bad game. And it's like I don't remember these games being as difficult as apparently they used to be when I was younger, because maybe it has something to do with obviously me knowing how to play the games, but I just feel like there needs to be more challenge. I feel like there's always something that you can do to get out of it now, or at least like the games aren't made to be difficult anymore, or at least not that difficult, because Atlas knew that there is that possibility that if they make it too difficult, these modern age gamers are not going to do it, because who wants to play a game that's ridiculously difficult and unplayable besides people who play Dark Souls apparently. But
yeah, I feel like Atlas games definitely used to be, in terms of what kept mainstream people away from it, were like, oh, they're too hard, I can't play them. Whereas now, hilariously, like you'll hear people talking about it like in games media, be like, yeah, Persona's really good, but it's like 200 hours long. And I'm like, are you playing with your pinky? Like I don't know how you play Persona 5 for 200 hours on your first playthrough. Like yeah, like 100% the game if you want, but like, bro, you can beat that game sub 100 hours very easily.
Oh, absolutely. I don't think that there's ever been a time where on my first playthrough that I played for 100 hours. Like, I feel like if you were doing everything, that's one thing. And if it's like your first time going through and you're trying to do like a complete run, then that's fine. That's one thing. But the most that I see whenever I play an SMT game is anywhere from like 60 to maybe like, I don't know, like 50 to 60 hours sounds about right.
Yeah, and I mean, honestly, I loved the length of like Tokyo Mirage sessions. Like the fact that I could do everything in that game in like a 50-hour playthrough, I thought was perfect. And considering how grand the scope of this is, I don't think it's going to be 100 hours for SMT5, which is fine for me. Like, not every game needs to be 100-hour long RPG. So, I'll be curious. Like, I wonder how people will feel. Because, like, even looking at Nocturne, like, Nocturne you can beat very quickly, like, if you skip a lot of what's kind of around it.
Yeah, I agree. And I mean, it's only made easier once you kind of make, like, this team that just, like, it covers everybody's weaknesses, and there isn't an issue like with progression. It just works until like you face something that's a little bit higher level, and then you're forced to like adapt to that, and then it just goes from there.
Mm-hmm. Next question comes from No, saying, any thoughts or opinions on the change from abbreviations to icons representing the elementals in basically like stuff like that for when you're in battle?
Um, it doesn't really bother me because, to be honest, like I looked at it and I looked at it and I could still tell what I'm looking at. It's one thing for me to look at something and then be like, this doesn't feel right. Like, for example, when you take the comparison, like it's super old, super old comparison, but it's like uh, you take a look at Revelations Persona and its interface, and then you take a look at Persona 1 PSP's interface. They are completely different. They do not play. They have the same mechanic wise, but they don't necessarily play the same. But a lot of it comes down to the design, how it sounds here. And if you didn't tell me that this was that game, I probably wouldn't be able to tell you what I was looking at. So I think if a game that I have known for many years releases a new installment in this franchise and I look at it and I can't recognize it, then that's where you've kind of lost me as a fan. Not a fan, but like as the player. You've lost me as a player because I don't know. Like, does that make sense?
No, I get it. Actually, I'm curious for you because I'm assuming you've not played Tokyo Mirage Sessions, correct?
Nope, because I'm on that bandwagon of I wanted this so bad and it wasn't what I thought it was going to be. But I have seen enough of Tokyo Mirage Sessions to know that like I looked at it and I was like, yeah, like I can see the connections to Tokyo Mirage Sessions here, but I can still see it as an SMT game.
I'm curious, like, how do you feel then about the HUD? Because, like, honestly, for me, as someone who like thinks TMS is like their best modern JRPG they've like made in at least a decade, like I am all in for it because like it marries what I want from an SMT HUD. It puts all the information I need on there without it seeming superfluous and also fitting to like the technical demand. So like something I saw was interesting. Someone was complaining in a video, not that the HUD looked like TMS, although there's definitely people who think that's a problem. They were like, oh, why are there demon icons? Like, if this game is all 3D models, why are there demon icons? Like, I don't need the entire bottom screen of the 3DS stuff here. The best part about why that's there is because if you'll notice in battle, you never see your entire party while fighting. Your entire party is always in the background, and so those images are there to show you always, okay, who's in your team, because Unreal Engine having more than like 5 enemies on screen that detailed would lead to like chugging and like performance issues. So why not just always have, okay, whose turn is it? That's whose model is there. So I think like it marries a lot of interesting concepts of like, okay, I want to display all the information I need to in a very information heavy game while also being able to let me remove other aspects from the game.
I agree, and it's kind of so. Let me think about it, because in a way we've kind of come full circle. Because if you go back and we went from having no like player sprites or player information in terms of like who's doing what, because that's just how SMT was. It was a very just like cookie cutter in how it like presented itself with, okay, it's this person's turn. What are you going to do? There wasn't any design to it or anything like that. So as we kept going forward, it kind of changed. You get up to Nocturne, where it's adopted. You can now see your characters. All the other characters that are on your team are in the background, aside from what's in front of you. Depending on if you're going to heal a certain person or have the option of healing one person versus the whole team, you can see the rest of the people, because obviously you're going to pick and choose who you're going to do what with. And then you kind of saw it again with Persona 3, Persona 4, and Persona 5. And now it's kind of come full circle where it's blended all of the both past games with like vanilla SMT 1, 2, everything. And then you take Nocturne, to a little bit of Tokyo Mirage Sessions, and all these other games that have adapted their battle system and interface and kind of melted it into this one universal form that, as you said, it's made for both visual, just it works without being super over encumbered. It also does a good enough job being able to keep it going, because as you said, if there is too many things on the Unreal Engine, yeah, it just goes to shit and looks bad.
All right, so UI tangent aside, next question we have is by Charlie121. It says, what are the chances of every fan actually getting the collector's edition before launch? So I kind of got into this a little earlier. I'm optimistically hoping that everyone's going to be able to get one who really wants it. But like for you, if you had to kind of guess, is your money on it still going to be a shit show even by launch to try and get it, or do you think it's going to normal out in the next couple of months?
It really depends on whether or not Atlas can kind of gauge the situation, because obviously if it becomes too much of an issue for them, or if it just becomes too much of like, we're doing what we can and it's just not working out at all, they're going to release a statement saying, we apologize, unfortunately we cannot like meet demand at the moment. And if that does happen, then I'm assuming in the next couple months or so we'll be able to see it kind of tamper off and get better, and then we'll be able to restock, and then people will be able to get their hands on it. But there is that possibility where if, because I think there was at least one post by them that said that this was supposed to be a limited run, right, for the premium edition.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so there is always that possibility that they could just be like, well, unfortunately, like, we've just totally sold stock and we don't unfortunately have enough, not enough incentive, but we just are not going to continue going and producing more of these because it was a limited run, which would be a dick thing to do. But I mean, there is that possibility. But I mean, I don't think there's ever been a time that I can personally think of where Atlas just released a limited product and we're just like, yeah, that's it. Like, we're done. I'm pretty sure it's always been like, it'll sell out. People who got it will got it. If you didn't get it, just wait a little bit. It'll come back in stock. And as long as you get it before launch, because typically, at least from what I've seen, they're usually all gone by then, depending on what game it is, of course. If it's a bigger game, they're obviously going to have more. If it's a smaller game, it depends on how many units the retail store stocked. So there's a lot of factors there, but I'm optimistic to at least believe that they will be able to gauge this in a better direction, because obviously if it's sold out that quickly for all these different HUDs or all these different users, then that obviously shows them that like they want this, and if they want something that bad, then I think that they should be able to provide everybody with that equal opportunity to get their hands on it. Because in my opinion, it's a pretty cool collector's edition. Like, you're getting a lot out of it, and like, I was pretty sold. It's kind of funny because like, I'm not a big bag guy, but the bag like kind of like sold me. Like, as soon as I saw it, I was like, I want that bag. And then like the fact that you're getting the soundtrack, the Demon art book, you're getting the steel book, and like a couple of other really cool goodies. It's like I think there's pretty good incentive to be able to pick that up because it is a cool collector's edition.
Mm-hmm. Next one is by Key. Says, so in the Japanese trailer, we saw that you will have demons following you around. How do you think this is going to be used in the game, such as overworld traversal, or do you think this is going to be small? I think this is actually going to be a pretty, like, not a huge factor, but I think this will sort of be similar to like how you saw in Devil, the Demon Summoner. Basically, pick a demon in your party, they can follow you around. Nothing hilarious. I don't think it's going to be like Pokemon in the sense of like, oh, you need this demon to gust you up past this giant rock or whatever. Like, I don't think it's going to be like that, just because I feel like SMT games have always kind of been about, okay, you discover the party you need. Like, I think it would be kind of limiting in terms of your party if it's like, no, you need someone with wind, or no, you need someone with light. So I think it'll just kind of be an aesthetics thing. I don't expect it to be like a clutch important thing.
Yeah, that's literally where my mind went too. I was like, they could literally just do the Devil Summoner thing where you can summon whatever and have it be able to do certain things around the overworld. Or like, if they're planning on doing that, there is a possibility you're going to see a lot of those skills return, where it's like item finder or like whatever like ability that's passive that you're able to put on demons, that if you have that demon out on the overworld, it's like, oh, you have a passive skill that while they're out there, you have a chance of finding like just items on the field, or maybe some gems to give to the skeleton guy, or just certain stuff like that. I think that's probably what they would do with it. Other than that, it might just be an aesthetic thing, because I think it'd be pretty cool to just have somebody running around with you. But I feel like if they are going to do that, then there must be some kind of bigger use, because I don't think Atlas would just make it a kind of design factor thing. Maybe they do, but I think it would just be like a missed opportunity on their end to do something like that.
Yeah. Let's see. So let's try and power through these before we get to the fucking 3-hour mark. Ethan Ovala says, and this is kind of more of a call-out one for me, but do you think your prediction you made in January regarding the game's performance awfully on Switch is still going to be true? So my prediction in the past kind of came from, I'm worried because we hadn't seen gameplay for so long that it was going to have to be a Switch Pro game, or it would have to be like streamed. Now obviously we've seen a lot of gameplay, but it's been from pretty early on in the gameplay footage. I think though after seeing it and seeing how they've been really smart about, they're using the game to make something that feels big, but is actually not really like, it's not crazy. It's kind of like how when you look at a Xenoblade game in the sense of, oh my god, Xenoblade is huge, look at these worlds, look at everything you're doing, but in the grand sense of it, technically, it's not really doing a lot, it's just doing it, the aesthetic of it is pushing it farther than just the, like, raw graphics of it, which is what I think they're really doing with SMT5. So, I'm glad to be wrong in that sense of like, oh, okay, how's it going to look? Because my thing I'd always told people was SMT5 is either going to look really, really bad and fans are going to love it, like SMT fans are going to love it, or it's going to look really, really good and it's going to have performance issues. So I'm glad it so far has amazingly found like that perfect medium of it looks good and we haven't had like bad like frame drops and stuff like that. We talked a little bit about DLC before. That was a previous question. Tanya says, do you think SMT5, do you think if SMT5 does well, that Atlas will revive its spin-off series? I'm personally hoping for Devil Survivor.
I like her already. I like where your mind's
I
at.
I like the Moxie. We need more Devil Survivor, obviously. I think if 5 does well, I don't think it like re-motivates them to do more spin-offs. I think if anything it shows them there's a world where Persona and SMT can exist. I think it'll just mean you'll get more of both and not just one every like console generation, hopefully.
Yeah, and I mean, isn't there that list? Like somebody was able to find a list or a detailed list and run down like what current Atlas projects they have on hand or what they plan on potentially doing. It was something like they do want to do something with Devil Summoner, they do want to do something with Devil Survivor, they want to do something with SMT 1 and 2, but unfortunately, as of where we are right now, we just haven't heard of anything like that. And while I don't think that they will have, I don't think this will build, agreed, I don't think it'll build an incentive to do anything with it, but I think it would be really cool because obviously if they're able to be shown that there's room for 2 franchises to make you a ton of money, or at least an equal amount of money, then like obviously there's going to be those fans that want that, because I think like every so often you always see those polls where they're always like, what do you want to see the most from us? And a lot of the time it ends up being like a spin-off game that unfortunately we just haven't seen anything done with.
Yeah, so like I think in like best case scenario in terms of that, because like this wouldn't be something that like shows like, oh, okay, cool, you're gonna get more ports. So I think like at the very least this selling better just will hopefully give Atlas and Sega more kind of reason to just be like, cool, let's put money into making more AAA things that are just one of 2 franchises.
Yeah, exactly.
Kyrian says, given how well the SMT5 Collector's Edition has been selling out, how many do you think have been made? Around like 50,000, 10,000, sorry, 5,000 or 10,000? I'm trying to get hard numbers now because every time I've talked to anybody at Atlas, they don't really know themselves. Like, obviously there are people there like kind of shutting it off, but the weird thing about it is like it's limited in the sense of, yes, it's not going to be made like as much as the regular edition, but they haven't even ordered it yet. So like even Atlas doesn't really know, like they haven't ordered the steelbook, they haven't ordered the art book or the CD. So like there's no hard number that really exists yet until we get closer to it. So we've just kind of got to play the waiting game, unfortunately.
Man, could you imagine if there was an instance like with the stupid duffel bag situation with like Fallout 76?
Don't will this into existence. Don't will this into existence, please.
Like, yeah, we know that we promised you a steel book edition, but like, what if it's just a regular like box, but flip it.
It's actually just the duffel bag from Fallout 4. It's just that they just threw it in there.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me see. So, World Dominator, this is a quick one, but I appreciate it. Do you think there will be alternate costumes for Nahabino similar to Flynn and Nanashi?
I fucking hope so. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, I'm strictly in the camp of like this team loves outfits, and they've done outfits that aren't just DLC. Like they have some great costumes that are just like in there. So I hope to God they don't like look at all their costumes and go, cool, let's sell this all. Because like the fact that P5 has no costumes outside of DLC is fucking really depressing when you think of how many other costumes the series had done in the past and were all included for free. So hopefully they know that including those, like, yeah, you could sell it, but you earn a lot of goodwill just by including it.
Well, I was gonna say if they decide to do that, like I wouldn't be surprised if like you see that DLC where it's like, oh, the costumes from SMT If or the costumes from SMT2. It's like we've done this already. Like
Yeah.
there exists original content in these other games.
You can only throw the Demonica armor and sell it to me so many times.
Oh my god, trust me. Like there was something special about seeing that Demonica suit and being able to do it for free in SMT4. But now it's like, nope, you want that? You got to pay for it. It's, all right, cool.
Shout out to Tokyo Mirage Sessions. They have it in there for free if you want that Demonic armor. Some good free content. Last two YouTube questions as we slowly make our way out of the abyss. VRen says, do you think we will be getting a new Persona game this year, or even teased with it being the anniversary, or are Atlas solely focusing on SMT5?
That's a you question.
Everything I've been told is just HD collections, and that's it. Like, it's going to be a very porty year. You're going to see ports, and don't expect anything big. I think it would be dumb for them to announce P6, but I mean, that team's working on it, so it's like, I guess, but just, it's one of those things of why announce it for it, like, why announce it after you finally have released one of your longest, like, production games? Like, if people asking, where's SMT5, like, why just immediately make another game like that, you know?
Because I think for the casual person who's in the franchise but isn't in it for, like, the long haul, you know what I mean? So in the sense of, like, once you finish a game, there's always, of course, going to be that drive where it's like, cool, I can't wait for the next game. But you patiently wait for it because by the time that you do get it, it's like, awesome, I'm ready for a new experience. But then there's just those fans that are like, cool, so I guess I'm just going to complain about it until the game actually comes out. Like, I don't care about what's going to happen after that, but I'm still waiting. I know it's been like 6 hours since I finished the game, but where's Persona 6?
Yeah, and I mean, I think it's easy to say, oh, that's boring. They're just going to do ports for the anniversary as announcements. But, like, honestly, I think people aren't understanding how much of a fucking announcement, like, freak out people would get at just do a Origins collection that is just P1 and the 2 duology. Do the Persona Q collection where it's 1 and 2 on consoles. Do the Arena, like, Ultimax port to consoles. They're just like, do something that isn't going to take a lot of money, but is going to make a lot of that fan base very excited.
Yeah, exactly.
Last question on YouTube, and this one I don't have a lot to say just because I'm always more of a I'm gonna complain about it when I like have it in my hands unless it seems really egregious. Dank Noob says, how do you feel about the buff changes in SMT5? So as an example now, when you're doing a status ailment, for instead of just being a single target, it's going to last for 3 entire rounds. For something like that, it's like cool. I don't know if that's like babyfying it until it's really in hand. Like just watching it in trailers and speculating, it's definitely a valid point, but like I trust them to know what they're doing.
Yeah, I mean, me too. I'm not really sure how I necessarily feel until the finished product is out and until I can actually experience it. But I mean, it's kind of like with the transition from SMT4 to Apocalypse with its like light and dark skills, where it's like light and dark used to be treated as like these instant death things. Like it had a chance of doing something. It didn't necessarily do damage. But then they changed it to where it's like, okay, not only does it have a chance of killing something that's possibly or not weak against it or doesn't resist it, but it also does damage on top of it, which is a thing that happened in the other original games. But that was a very like small example of like a change that people considered to be like, oh, this is new. It's like, well, it's not necessarily new. It's just something that they brought back from an older existing game and like made it semi-relevant again.
Mm-hmm. All right, our last speed round before our bladders explode come from Twitter. Our first question is by Driz. Says, instead of a SMT5 Switch, how would you feel about a SMT5 Pro controller? Which I will say, it would have to look really nice because I'm a monster and I hate the Switch Pro controller. I think that controller sucks.
Yeah, I think so. Well, so I'm of the mind where I would want a skin more than a controller. I don't know why. I would like it more. But I don't know, because I'm not typically somebody who decks out my like consoles too much. So I don't have like a general enough incentive to do that. But I guess if I had to, it'd probably be something like that.
Next one's kind of an interesting one. This is by Demon Handbook. It says, do you think the daily demon reveals will affect the excitement and possibly spoil some of the game by the time November rolls around? I think that's a great question in the sense, like, I think it definitely could. I've not watched, like, I've skipped the last, I think, like, 4, outside of, like, oh, cool, checking it out for it, but, like, it's cool that that's there, but I think it would be very easy to, like, get burnt out, especially because, like, we have 5 months left, and it's like we've waited all this time. Like, I would hate for just me to then kind of feel like I'm on media burnout, even though the game is so close to coming out. Like, how about you?
So I'm of a mind where if they do continue to do this all the way, which they are, obviously, if they continue to do this up until the reveal in the final release of the game, I don't think that they're going to reveal any bosses, because obviously if they did, then that completely defeats the purpose, because it's like, if you're going to show us a boss, not only does it show that we have the ability to make them, which is something that like has been a thing in the franchise forever, but that wasn't always the case. Like, you couldn't always use boss characters that you fight in the game, which I think created some kind of interesting incentive. So I think it would be kind of bad on their end to showcase boss demons, especially if they're new boss demons, because then it's like, okay, well, now I know what to expect. I can already pinpoint that this is going to happen with this demon in the game, so there's not really that surprise factor with it. And since they are going to go with this, I don't think they'll do that. And I'm a little cautious too, because there is that possibility that they will spoil something that they just shouldn't be spoiling. Like, I was already spoiled with that one Celtic demon that they showed off pretty early on. Like, when he was first shown on the promo art, I was like, oh, okay, he's pretty cool. Like, I'm interested. And they're just like, he's like one of the first that they showcased. I was like, all right, so he's not that special. Awesome.
So, next one comes from Mirth, and this is an interesting one in terms of DLC, but a little bit of an interesting twist. How do you think, or not how do you think, do you think Atlas could do Epilogue DLC for SMT5 a couple of months after release? This is where it kind of goes back to that like PlayStation port, like a year and a half later. I think they could do an epilogue. I think they would rather just resell you the whole game a year and a half later than just make you buy $30 DLC.
Yeah, that's probably what would happen. Like, I don't think that Atlas has been guilty of releasing DLC for the game and then just being like, oh, hey, so I know you bought the DLC, but like, here's the version that has just the DLC wrapped in it. So if you want the full thing, like, here you go. But what do I know? I definitely think if that is what they would do, then it would just be they're going to sell you the full game with the DLC included. It's not going to be like they're expecting you to rebuy everything one by one again.
This kind of also goes back to another thing we were talking about with guest characters or like optional super bosses coming in. So Ren Steele says, in terms of like guest characters coming in, how do you feel like Atlas is handling it, and do you like worry that the characters would pop in without kind of hijacking the plot? So I think that's an interesting character. I think it's nice for in situations like Nocturne where, oh, you see Demi-Fiend or Dante, like, sorry, you see Rhino or Dante like twice mandatory wise, but then you can never see him again. I think stuff like that is a little bit like, okay, like either have them all the way in the game or not. Like, I think like making them mandatory and then just dropping their character plot seems weird. I enjoy them as kind of just being stuff that's always optional. Like, have them have almost nothing to do with the plot, or at least not something that you would run into but never finish unless you saw it through to completion, you know?
Yeah, because I definitely can say that I'm sure there are those players who played, they saw those cutscenes, they weren't really interested in taking the time of finishing the Labyrinth of Amala. They finished the game, and then they think back and they're like, well, or like they go to their second playthrough, they get to that same beginning cutscene that shows them, and they're like, well, so I remember that they're in the game, but like, what do they like? Where are they? What do they do? So I agree that I think it would be more beneficial to, if they are going to add characters like that, at least do something more with them and don't lock them behind an optional thing. It's either one or the other, but I personally would like if it was just like you didn't see it at all. It was completely like an optional thing, because it does give you that surprise of like, holy shit, they actually like did something different and didn't like give it away. Because I definitely think like Atlas has like a bad habit of giving certain things away.
Jordan, do you play any of the Kingdom Hearts games?
I do.
I think about this situation like with Sephiroth. I think one of the big reasons people complained, rightfully so, that they didn't do fucking shit with Sephiroth and Cloud in Kingdom Hearts 3 is because they literally threw a cutscene in the middle of Kingdom Hearts 2 explaining that Sephiroth is in this world. No one was asking in Kingdom Hearts 2, oh, where's that optional super boss from the first game? But because they showed him in the middle of Kingdom Hearts 2, it's like, where the fuck is Cloud and Sephiroth in Kingdom Hearts 3? So it's kind of like one of those things of like, you don't want a Sephiroth in the middle of your game. Sephiroth is a great optional boss, but you can't just throw him in the middle and act like, oh, he's just off doing his own thing. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, I definitely agree there. That's honestly, I forgot that cutscene even like happens in the game, because like once you finish like when I played the vanilla game, finished it, beat the optional boss fight, and then I went back and replayed like the HD versions of it, and I was like, oh yeah, they just have a cutscene that's like, oh hey, like if you want some additional content, like come fight me here whenever.
Devil Moon, we did talk a little bit about the TMS HUD, but he did ask, and I appreciate this, special call to me, will you be covering more Monarch news? Yes, so I'll be covering more. There's supposed to be a new trailer out, I think maybe by the time we're done recording this episode. So when there's more Monarch news, I'm definitely going to be talking about it. Caligula 2 just came out in Japan, so I think once NIS finally gives us that date, I'm praying for September. Once we get more kind of news on both of those, I'll be throwing more news for both of those games in here. Jordan, for you, have you been following Monarch at all? I know Caligula is kind of more, it's a sequel to the first one, which, like, hey, if you're into it, you're into it. But I feel like Monarch is the one that I'm trying to really push on people of like, hey, don't sleep on this game. This game looks great. Please check out this game, people.
So until both you and another friend of mine told me about it, I didn't know too much about it, and then I looked into it. It does look really cool. The fact that it's built up of a team of older SMT like team members is awesome. I think that there are a lot of parallels between like you can kind of like just feel that it's like that it has like this SMT aesthetic, and it plays a little bit like it too. And like obviously, as you said, it does take a lot of inspiration from Caligula, which I think is cool. I never played the first game to completion. I played a little bit from a friend, and then I saw that the second game was coming out, which it looks really cool too. But in terms of Monarch, the more like that comes out about it, I probably will end up invested and ended up picking it up.
Also, I'm just saying, hey, Monarch, that's a PS5 game, so strike one against SMT5.
There you go.
Persona Forever says, on a scale of 1 to 10, what are the possibilities in your opinion that Nahabino is the next DLC character? So I was kind of surprised when I made a tweet about this like a week and a half ago or something. I was like the third person on Twitter to suggest Nahabino being the last Smash character, and I was amazed at how much it blew up, of like people legitimately jumping behind this, because like the way I thought about it like this is the most Sakurai way to end it. Like, start with an Atlas character, end with an Atlas character. Why? Because fuck you. Why should it be someone from a character you've always waited for? Like, it just seems like too perfect of like, It's probably going to be out by the end of the year. It's going to be around the time SMT5 has been done. Like, Nahabino's character design has been done for a very long time. It wouldn't be impossible to really put him in there. And honestly, the more I think about it, he'd be a pretty cool character.
Yeah, I could definitely see some fun things that they would have and be able to do with that character. So, yeah, the way that it's all framed, the way I agree from the sentiment that this is a very like Sakurai thing to do, because the man just feeds off of people being sad that characters that they've been wanting forever just don't make it.
Here, this is a better question then. For you, do you want Nahabino to be the last character?
I think it'd be pretty cool. I think it'd be really fitting. I definitely would play him and I would buy him. I don't have anything against it. I think it'd be super cool.
All right, I think we have like 2 or 3 of these left. We're almost to the end of the tunnel. Oh my god, thank you all for your questions.
No
I was like, no one's gonna have questions this week. We're all burnt out. Here we go. Are there any ideas, mechanics, or elements from 4 and Apocalypse that you would hope make it into 5, or anything that you don't want to, or anything? And what do you think should be left out? So basically, old mechanics from 4 coming in, and what mechanics do you not want to see make a return?
I definitely I don't think they're going to, but I wouldn't want to see the assist gauge come back. I think that was something that made the game trivially easy, and it just didn't make sense. Like, I just thought it was really stupid because it wasn't something that just like
I like the idea of having extra party members. I hate that it's all out of my hands though.
Yes, agreed. I will say though that I'm glad that it was nice that you could at least select your party member because you get a lot of them, of course. And with SMT4 you couldn't do that, but with Apocalypse you could. So I thought that was really cool. It still wasn't the best and most fine-tuned thing, but whatever, it exists. So I wouldn't want to see that. I would like to see so they've already brought back essentially what is Rags for that skeleton guy, so that's pretty cool. So if they are just going to make some callbacks, aside from the ones they've already made, I think it'd be really cool to bring back Sharon or Karen. There's different pronunciations of him. I think it'd be cool just to bring him back as game over screen or a possibility of coming back from death. But at the same time, I know that brings up the thing of well, if you know you're going to die, then why don't you just save the game and then give up the money that you would to revive yourself and then just reload the save and just do better.
Oh yeah, for sure. This one's kind of an easier answer. Really quick by Dez, and also the last question was by Despair Cake. This next one by Dez though says, do you think we'll be getting a SMT5 Switch similar to how we got one with the 3DS? I keep telling people if that's gonna happen, we're gonna know about it 2 or 3 months before the game comes out. Nintendo likes to hold those until last second because basically they know there's no way they can there's no way that they will produce enough. So then the closer they announce it to launch, the kind of quicker people will be mad at them and move on. So if it is going to happen, it's going to be then. But until then, it's your guess is as good as mine. So next one though, this is an issue one by Monoplush. Do you think SMT5 will have alignments and reasons?
Well, I don't know. Because with how many callbacks they've been making with Nocturne, it wouldn't be unlikely, I guess, to see a more traditional form of reason or a revamped version of the reason aspect. But instead of it being something that you go down this linear path and you talk to them, I feel like there would be more weight to those questions, or at least you'd be doing more than just running into them, talking to them, and doing something. I feel like it would be something that you would actually have to go out of your way to do. But at the same time, I know it wasn't super well received, so it is possible that we just won't even see that, and we'll just see a continuation of alignments. If so, I hope they at least make it relevant again, because with how they were handled in Apocalypse, there wasn't a law and chaos ending. There was 2 endings that were just defined as good and bad, and that's not how Shin Megami Tensei should be. You can get all analytical and theological, but good and evil are pretty black and white when it comes to Shin Megami Tensei, and I feel like that's how it should be. Like, it should be something that you should think about. You shouldn't stop and be like, well, I know I'm picking the bad guy option, so I'm just going to be the bad guy, or I'm a good guy, so like I'm going to do the good thing, because that's all of your choices have consequences. All of them mean different things, and sometimes the good option isn't always the best, and sometimes the bad option isn't always the worst. So
Yeah, I'm in the camp of I kind of want a mixture of both. Of like, I want to be surprised. Like, I like aspects of reasons compared to alignments, but also the implementation of reasons is really linear and kind of disappointing. But also, you can say the same thing for alignments. Of like, you can play the game, and almost all of the games 80% the same. It just depends on what text box you select. I think that's a really kind of just boring way to pick it. So hopefully, I get a little bit more
yeah.
surprise there. The only other questions we had were stuff we already kind of talked about it. So we talked about our thoughts on the gameplay. So that was by a random guy, and also JD Anime and Games. We were talking about the European situation with the collector's edition. So our final, last, how do you do question, which isn't actually a question, comes by Phil. And Phil on the Discord says, tell Jordan I said hi. So Phil says hi, and that's our final question.
Thank you, Phil.
So everybody, we made it after a 3.5 hour long episode last week. I decided to be really mean to my guest this week and make it another 3 hour long episode. So we went longer than I thought we would. And these cucks over at Game Informer still can't post their goddamn preview, so I think they just fell asleep and don't want to do it. So, congratulations. We waited as long as possible, and there's still no actual news. But Jordan, thank you so much for suffering through this eternal hellscape of talking to me for 3 hours with no bathroom breaks. I appreciate it greatly.
No, I mean, I appreciate it. I know this has been something that I've definitely been interested in, and I'm sure you've beaten it over my head a whole bunch of times about wanting to come on board and do one of these. So I'm really glad
I have known you an embarrassingly long amount of time for you not to have been on here. It was kind of like one of those funny things of like, when I finally had like Marcus, or I still haven't actually had Kat on here, hilariously enough, but like those people like that of like, how have these people not been on? And it's like, it's just like, it just hasn't happened because it just doesn't happen. Like, not that there's no one specific reason, but I'm glad we were able to get you back, especially because we're at the dawn of a new beginning. You know, SMT5 is revealed, about to come out. You are going to be doing more stuff on your channel. So I guess in terms of like where you want people to find you, where can people stalk you? Where would you like them to follow you, and all that fun stuff?
Well, hopefully when I get around to it, you can follow me on my YouTube channel. It's literally just my name. Or you can find me on the Fiend Alice the Fiend Alice Facebook page. I'm the only one who runs it. I haven't been doing a lot of content on it. I just recently started covering more stuff with the latest Shin Megami Tensei 5 news. So hopefully that's going to start blowing up, because, like we've said, we just have these like weird dry spells with the franchise, and once news picks up, that's when all my stuff kind of tends to pick up more. So this actually is a good thing for me. So hopefully I'm going to start devoting more time to that. Other than that, I'm sure you'll be able to find me on Facebook and Instagram. Doing my thing.
All right. I will have all those links, by the way, in the show notes for if anyone's curious and stuff like that. Very long spiel time. You can find me on Twitter at Torchwood4SP. You can find the podcast on Twitter at SMT Network. Find the show on iTunes, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, just by searching Spencer Presley or Shin Megami Tensei Network. Join the Discord, join the Facebook group by going to facebook.com/groups/SMTN. No SMT Network, but I'm sure by the time you've typed in those letters, hopefully something comes up. You can help support the show by going to patreon.com/SMTN, where you can enjoy the show early, like people are hopefully now. We're recording this on Sunday, so if you missed any megaton bombs on Monday or Tuesday, you now know why. But yes, if you want to get the show a little bit early and help get the show actually chugging along, paying for the bills and all that fun stuff, you can go to the Patreon and check that out there. But that should be it. I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but I've desperately got to get out of here and go pee. My God. Jordan, before we finish this off and say our goodbyes, I have one last hard question for you and all the audience. We can't actually answer this, but you talking about the protagonist got me thinking about this. the internet has been very horny for the new protagonist, correct?
Yes, they have.
We literally have a giant blue big titty summoning monster in the form of Sophia. She's the new basically Cathedral of Shadows alternative. Not a single bit of porn for her. Where is the Sophia
Super
porn?
sad.
Literally, when you summon demons, you're playing the fucking organs on the statue that are just massive tits. And we're like, no. The protagonist's getting fucked or doing the fucking. That's where all the porn. So my question for all of you for the next week: where's the Sophia porn? Not Persona 5 Scramble Sophia, although thank you for a lot of that existing. There's a lot of that. But in all of my research, I have found not a lick of regular SMT5 Sophia. So if we could just push that in the right direction, will that into existence, I think the world would be probably not a better place, but it would be a little bit nicer. That's all I'm gonna say for everybody. So Jordan, this is when you uncomfortably say goodbye, and we never talk again for the next 9 years.
Oh, that's not true. I'm sure that our paths are gonna cross again. I need to stop being literal Isamu and being in solitude and just get out and be active.
It's hard,
again.
man. When you're in that whale mouth, it's hard to get out.
Yep. Little ball of energy with my fedora and just my thoughts.
All right, let's
sounding like Robbie Damon.
Yeah, I was gonna say let's channel our inner Robbie Damon and say goodbye for everybody. So goodbye, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See ya.